The champagne wasn't poisoned by accident, it was a message. And the message was clear. Rafael Moretti's greatest weakness wasn't his empire, his enemies, or his reputation. It was the woman carrying his child, bleeding out on a marble floor while Manhattan's elite pretended not to notice. This is a story about power, survival, and the moment a crime lord had to choose between vengeance and love. If you want to see how far one man will go to protect what's his, stay until the end. And if this story grabs you, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city. I want to see how far this tale travels. Eat. The Vanderbilt Grand Hotel didn't host charity galas. It staged coronations. Tonight's event, a fundraiser for pediatric cancer research, had drawn Manhattan's upper crust like moths to a flame wrapped in silk and dripping with diamonds. Crystal chandeliers caught the light from 1,000 candles, scattering it across the ballroom in fragments of gold. A string quartet played something classical and forgettable, the kind of music designed to make wealth feel virtuous. Elena Marlowe stood near the champagne fountain, her emerald gown clinging to curves she'd spent the last month trying to hide. 4 months pregnant, and nobody knew. Not her mother, who would have immediately started planning a wedding that Elena didn't want. Not her best friend Kara, who couldn't keep a secret if her life depended on it. And certainly not the 300 guests currently air-kissing and networking their way through $20,000 a plate pasta. Well, almost nobody. Rafael Moretti knew. Of course he knew. The man knew when a shipment from Marseille was delayed by 15 minutes, when a city councilman was having second thoughts about a zoning vote, when a rival family's accountant was skimming off the top. Knowing things was Rafael's business, and business was very, very good. Elena caught his eye across the ballroom. He stood in a circle of men who thought they were powerful, a hedge fund manager, a real estate developer, the CEO of some pharmaceutical company currently being investigated for price gouging. They were circling Rafael like pilot fish around a shark, not quite understanding that they were only alive because he allowed it. Rafael's dark eyes held hers for exactly 3 seconds. In that brief connection, she saw what the others never would. The way his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly when he noticed how pale she looked. The slight forward shift of his weight as if preparing to cross the room. The protective fury that lived just beneath his perfectly tailored surface. She gave him a small smile. "I'm fine," and turned back to the woman beside her, a gallery owner named Patricia, who was in the middle of a story about a sculpture made entirely of recycled medical waste. "Provocative, really," Patricia was saying, gesturing with a glass of Bordeaux that probably cost more than most people's car payments. "The artist is making a statement about healthcare inequality in America. Very now, very urgent. I'm thinking of giving her a solo show in the spring." Elena murmured, accepting a champagne flute from a passing waiter. She brought it to her lips but didn't drink, a trick she'd perfected over the last month. People saw what they expected to see. Woman at party. Glass in hand, therefore woman drinking. It had worked at 6 events and counting. The waiter moved on. A young man she didn't recognize. Odd. The Vanderbilt always used the same catering company, and Elena had been to enough of these things to know the regular staff. This one was nervous, she noticed. His hand had trembled slightly when he'd offered her the tray. New, probably. First big event. She remembered that feeling, the terror of serving champagne to people who spent more on shoes than she used to make in a month. That was before Rafael, before the life she lived now. Comfortable, protected, complicated. Before the pregnancy that was about to change everything. Patricia was still talking, something about installation art and the male gaze, but Elena's attention had snagged on a woman in red across the room. Vivian Sterling, socialite and professional party attendee, known for her charitable work the way some people were known for their criminal records, extensively and with significant skepticism about the details. Vivian was watching her. Not the casual observation of one woman clocking another's dress, but a focused, almost clinical assessment. When their eyes met, Vivian's mouth curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes, and she raised her champagne flute in a small salute. A cold finger traced down Elena's spine. "You look pale, darling," Patricia said, her tone shifting from art speak to genuine concern. "Are you feeling all right?" "Just tired," Elena replied, the lie coming easily. "I've been working late on a project." That much was true. She'd been consulting on the restoration of a historic brownstone in Brooklyn Heights, work she loved even if it didn't technically require her attention anymore. Raphael had made it clear she never had to work again, but Elena wasn't built to be idle. The brownstone project gave her something to focus on besides the growing secret in her belly and the impossible conversation she kept postponing. How exactly did you tell a man like Raphael Moretti that you were pregnant? The same man who'd once told her, in a rare moment of vulnerability, that he'd never bring a child into his world. That any son or daughter of his would be a target from birth, leverage for enemies, a weakness he couldn't afford. That conversation had been 8 months ago, before the night of the blackout, before the wine and the candlelight, and the way he'd looked at her like she was the only real thing in a world built on lies. 4 months ago, to be exact. The ballroom tilted slightly. Elena blinked, steadying herself against the high-top table beside her. Patricia was looking at her with concern now, one manicured hand reaching out. "Elena, should I get—" "I'm fine," Elena said quickly. "Really, I just need some air." She started toward the terrace doors, her heels clicking against marble that probably cost more per square foot than most Manhattan apartments. The room felt too hot suddenly, too bright, too full of people with their expensive perfumes and practiced laughs, and her vision tilted again, harder this time. The champagne flute slipped from her fingers, and she watched it fall in slow motion, the crystal catching the light as it tumbled end over end. It hit the marble with a sound like a bell breaking, champagne exploding outward in a starburst of liquid and glass. Elena's knees gave out. She felt herself falling, felt strong hands catch her before she hit the floor, felt the sharp sting in her palm where a shard had sliced through skin. Blood welled up, bright red against the pale pink of her palm, and she watched it with distant fascination as the ballroom spun around her. Somewhere in the chaos of sound, gasps, exclamations, the sudden silence as the string quartet stopped playing, she heard a voice she'd recognize anywhere. "Elena!" Raphael's voice cut through the noise like a blade through silk, sharp and commanding and absolutely terrified. She'd never heard him scared before. Raphael Moretti didn't do scared. He did calculated, controlled, lethally calm. But he was scared now. She tried to tell him she was okay, tried to lift her head, but her body wasn't cooperating. The room kept spinning, and her stomach was churning in a way that had nothing to do with morning sickness and everything to do with the fact that something was very, very wrong. Raphael appeared above her, his face swimming into focus. His hands were on her face, her throat, checking her pulse with the efficiency of someone who'd checked too many pulses to count, most of them while watching the life drain out of people who'd made the mistake of crossing him. "Look at me," he commanded, his voice deadly quiet. "Elena, look at me." She forced her eyes to focus on his face. Dark eyes, sharp cheekbones, the scar along his left temple that he'd gotten in a knife fight when he was 17. She knew every line of that face, every expression, every micro-shift that signaled what he was thinking. Right now, he was thinking about murder. "The baby," she whispered, her hand moving instinctively to her stomach. Raphael's eyes went absolutely flat, the expression he wore when he was about to do something that would make men beg for mercy they wouldn't receive. His gaze swept the ballroom, cataloging exits, faces, potential threats with the cold efficiency of a predator selecting prey. When he spoke, his voice carried across the entire room despite being barely above a whisper. It was a voice that made people remember that beneath the tailored suits and the charitable donations and the legitimate business holdings, Raphael Moretti was a man who'd built an empire on broken bones and broken promises. "Nobody leaves." The two words landed like a death sentence. The guests, who'd been murmuring and backing away, froze. Several started to protest. These were people used to getting their way, used to their money and connections opening every door. Raphael didn't even look at them. He pulled out his phone with one hand while keeping the other on Elena's face, his thumb stroking her cheekbone in a gesture so tender it seemed impossible from someone who'd just locked down a room full of Manhattan's elite like prisoners. "Marco," he said into the phone, his eyes never leaving Elena's face, "seal the building. Every exit, every stairwell, every service entrance. Nobody in, nobody out. I want a full guest list, security footage from every camera, and the name of every staff member working tonight. I want it in 5 minutes." He hung up without waiting for confirmation. Marco Donati, his head of security, knew better than to need confirmation. Raphael, Elena managed, her voice weak. What? Shh. His fingers found her pulse point again, counting. She saw his jaw tighten. You're going to be fine. The baby's going to be fine. But somebody here made a very serious mistake, and I'm going to find out who. The way he said it made Elena's blood run colder than whatever poison was working through her system. She'd seen Raphael angry before, had watched him dismantle a man's entire life with 3 phone calls when that man had tried to extort her for money. But this was different. This was personal. This was about their child. I didn't drink it, Elena said, the words coming out in a rush. The champagne, I didn't drink it, just held it. Skin contact, Raphael said, his voice tight. Some compounds absorb through skin, the heat of your hand on the glass, the time you held it. He looked at her bleeding palm where the glass had cut her, and something murderous flickered across his face. Direct entry into the bloodstream. A man in a tuxedo pushed through the crowd. Doctor Harrison Chen, a cardiac surgeon who sat on the boards of half the hospitals in New York and probably owed Raphael more favors than he could count in a lifetime. Let me see her, Chen said, dropping to his knees beside them, without regard for his $10,000 suit. Raphael didn't move. You tell me she's fine before you touch her. Raphael, you tell me she's fine, or I find someone who can. Chen met his eyes, and whatever he saw there made him nod slowly. I'll do everything I can, but I need to examine her, and we need to get her somewhere I can work. Raphael stood in one fluid motion, Elena cradled in his arms as if she weighed nothing. She wanted to protest. She could walk, probably. She wasn't an invalid, but another wave of nausea hit her and she pressed her face against his shoulder instead. The donor lounge, Raphael said. Clear it. They moved through the ballroom like a king through his court, guests scattering before them. Elena caught glimpses of shocked faces, Patricia with her hand over her mouth, the hedge fund manager looking vaguely ill, Vivian Sterling in her red dress watching with an expression Elena couldn't quite read. The donor lounge was meant for the Gala's biggest contributors, a private room with leather furniture and a fully stocked bar, and enough quiet prestige to make check writing easier. Raphael kicked the door open and set Elena down on the leather couch, with a gentleness that contradicted the violence in his eyes. Dr. Chen was already pulling supplies from his medical bag. Of course, he had a medical bag at a charity gala. Of course, he was prepared for this. Men in Raphael's orbit learned to always be prepared. Talk to me, Raphael commanded, watching as Chen checked Elena's vital signs. Pulses elevated, pupils responsive but sluggish. Signs of acute distress consistent with toxin exposure. Chen looked up. I need to know what she ingested or came into contact with. Time is critical. Working on it. Raphael's phone was already ringing. He answered without looking at the screen. Tell me. Marco's voice came through, loud enough for Elena to hear. Security footage is being pulled now. Guest list is being compiled. Building is locked down. 2 people tried to leave through the kitchen. They're detained. Staff manifest shows a replacement waiter hired 3 days ago through an agency we don't normally use. Find him. Raphael's eyes were on Elena as he spoke, watching every breath, every movement. Find everyone who touched her champagne glass from the moment it was poured. Find who approved the agency change. Find... Elena convulsed, her body arching off the couch as her stomach rebelled. Chen moved fast, turning her on her side as she vomited violently onto the expensive Persian rug. Raphael was there instantly, one hand supporting her head, the other pressed against the small of her back. Elena, stay with me. His voice was rough now, the controls slipping. Stay with me, cara mia. She tried to respond, but another wave hit her, and then another. Her body was trying to purge the poison, and she let it, gasping between spasms while Raphael held her and Doctor. Chen worked around them both with grim efficiency. When the vomiting finally stopped, she was shaking and weak, cold sweat coating her skin. Raphael pulled off his suit jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders, then lifted her back onto the couch. His hands were steady, but she could see the muscle jumping in his jaw, the only tell that he was barely holding it together. The baby, she whispered again. Chen had his stethoscope out, pressing it against her abdomen. Elena watched his face, trying to read his expression, trying to understand what he was hearing. The silence stretched too long. Chen. Raphael's voice was deadly quiet. The baby. Fetal heartbeat is present but rapid. Distress pattern. Chen looked up, meeting Raphael's eyes. We need to get her to a hospital. Full monitoring, possible intervention. No hospitals. Raphael's response was immediate and absolute. Too exposed, too many variables I can't control. Raphael, she needs... I have a facility. Raphael was already dialing. Private, secure, full surgical suite, equipment better than half the hospitals in this city. We'll take her there. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to say that she needed a real hospital, needed doctors who weren't in Raphael Moretti's pocket, but another wave of nausea hit her, weaker this time, but still enough to steal her breath, and she realized that Raphael was right. Someone had just tried to poison her at a charity gala surrounded by security and witnesses. A hospital would be chaos, exposure, opportunity for whoever wanted her dead to try again. The door burst open. Marco Donati strode in, 6'3" of pure intimidation in a suit that couldn't quite hide the shoulder holster underneath. Behind him, two of Raphael's men dragged a young man in a waiter's uniform, the replacement waiter. Even through her haze of pain and fear, Elena recognized him, the nervous one who'd handed her the champagne. Found him trying to climb out a service window, Marco reported. Says he doesn't know anything, just took a job for extra cash. Raphael stood slowly, his movements precise and controlled in a way that made the temperature in the room drop 10 degrees. He walked to the waiter, who was now visibly shaking, and tilted his head as if examining an interesting specimen. What's your name? Raphael asked, his voice pleasant, conversational, the most dangerous tone Elena had ever heard him use. To Tyler Morrison. Look, man, I don't know what... Tyler. Raphael smiled, and Tyler Morrison went absolutely white. Tyler, I'm going to ask you some questions, and you're going to answer them truthfully. If you lie to me, even once, I'm going to hurt you in ways that will make you beg for death. Do you understand? Tyler nodded frantically. Good. Who hired you? An agency, Prestige Events Staffing. They called me 3 days ago, said it was last minute, paid cash up front. Who gave you the champagne? It was on the tray, already poured. I just picked it up and started serving. Who told you to serve it to her specifically? Raphael's voice never changed, still pleasant, still conversational. Nobody. I swear, I was just walking around and the lady took a glass. I didn't even offer it specifically. Raphael's hand shot out, grabbing Tyler by the throat. Not choking, just holding, just a reminder of how easy it would be. Try again, and this time, remember that the woman you poisoned is carrying my child. The words hung in the air. Elena saw Marco's eyes widen fractionally. He'd suspected, but not known for certain. Doctor. Chen didn't react at all, too professional or too smart to show surprise. Tyler was crying now, tears streaming down his face. The woman in red. She pointed you, the pregnant lady, out to me, said to make sure she got a glass from the second tray, the one in the kitchen. I didn't know it was poisoned. I swear to God I didn't know. Raphael released him with a slight push, and Tyler stumbled backward into Marco's men. The woman in red, description. Older, like maybe 50, really put together, fancy dress, lots of jewelry. She gave me $2,000 cash to make sure the right person got the right glass. Vivian Sterling, Elena said from the couch, her voice weak but certain. Raphael turned to look at her, and the expression on his face would have terrified her if it had been directed at her instead of at the woman who'd just tried to kill her and their unborn child. Marco, Raphael said quietly, bring me Vivian Sterling, and anyone else who touched that champagne tray, and the event coordinator who approved the staffing agency change. Bring them all here. Done. Marco pulled out his phone, already giving orders. Raphael returned to Elena's side, his hand finding hers, his thumb tracing careful circles around the cut on her palm where the glass had sliced her. How are you feeling? Like someone tried to poison me. She managed a weak smile. But better. The vomiting helped, I think. Doctor. Chen? Chen was checking her vitals again, his movements efficient. Blood pressure stabilizing, heart rate decreasing. Whatever she ingested, it appears she didn't absorb a lethal dose. The vomiting likely saved her life. He pressed the stethoscope to her abdomen again, listening. Fetal heart rate is still elevated, but starting to normalize. I want her under constant monitoring for the next 48 hours minimum. Raphael nodded. The facility is ready. I want you there with her, full team. Raphael. Elena squeezed his hand. What are you going to do? He looked at her, and for a moment the mask slipped and she saw everything underneath. The fear he'd been controlling, the rage he'd been containing, the absolute determination to destroy anyone who'd threatened his family. I'm going to find out who ordered this, he said simply, and then I'm going to make sure they understand why that was a mistake. The door opened again. This time, Marco's men brought in 3 people, a middle-aged man in a catering manager's uniform, a young woman who Elena recognized as the event coordinator, and Vivian Sterling in her red dress, looking significantly less composed than she had in the ballroom. I demand to know what's going on here, Vivian started, her voice sharp with indignation. You can't just... Sit down. Raphael didn't raise his voice, didn't have to. Vivian sat. The event coordinator was already crying. Mr. Moretti, I don't know what happened, I swear. The agency came highly recommended. All their paperwork was in order. The agency, Raphael interrupted, his attention on the catering manager now. You didn't question using a new staffing company? The manager swallowed hard. Mrs. Sterling specifically requested them. She's on the planning committee, said she had a nephew who worked there, wanted to help him out. It seemed harmless. Raphael's eyes cut to Vivian. She'd gone very pale, but she lifted her chin in defiance. This is ridiculous. I have no idea what you think I've done. You paid a waiter $2,000 to serve poisoned champagne to Elena Marlowe. Raphael's voice was perfectly calm. You identified her as pregnant to someone who wanted that information. And you're going to tell me who? I want my lawyer. You'll get your lawyer. Raphael pulled out his phone and held it up. On the screen was security footage, clear as day. Vivian speaking to Tyler Morrison in the kitchen, money changing hands, Vivian pointing toward the ballroom. Right after you tell me who you're working for. Right after you tell me who wants my child dead. Vivian's composure cracked. You can't prove... Raphael tapped the screen and the video zoomed in. Even without sound, it was clear what was happening. Vivian had orchestrated this. Vivian had targeted Elena specifically. Last chance, Raphael said softly. Who paid you? The silence stretched. Elena could see Vivian calculating, trying to find a way out, trying to determine if Raphael was bluffing about whatever consequences he was implying. She didn't know him well enough to realize he never bluffed. Caruso, Vivian finally said, the name coming out like a confession. Nico Caruso paid me to confirm Elena's pregnancy and report back. He said he just wanted information. I didn't know he was going to... She stopped, but the damage was done. Nico Caruso, heir to the Caruso crime family, Raphael's primary competition in a dozen different markets, the man who'd been trying to undermine Raphael's operations for the last 2 years with increasing desperation. The man who apparently thought killing Elena and Raphael's unborn child would give him an advantage. Raphael went very, very still. It was the stillness of a predator before the strike, and everyone in the room felt it. Even Dr. Chen stepped back slightly, medical professionalism giving way to survival instinct. Where is he? Raphael asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't know. I swear I don't know. Vivian was backing away now, stumbling over her own feet. He contacts me. I don't contact him. Marco. Raphael didn't look away from Vivian. Find Nico Caruso. Find every Caruso lieutenant, every associate, every business front. I want locations. I want schedules. I want to know where they eat breakfast and what time they take a shit. I want everything. On it. Marco was already on his phone, his voice low and urgent as he gave rapid-fire orders. Elena felt another wave of pain roll through her abdomen, different this time, sharper, more localized. She gasped, her hand pressing against her stomach, and Raphael was beside her in an instant. Elena? Something's wrong, she managed. Raphael, something's... Dr. Chen pushed past Raphael, his hands on her abdomen, his face grim. We're out of time. She's bleeding internally. We need to move now, or we're going to lose them both. Raphael scooped her up again, and Elena could feel the tremor in his hands that he was trying to control. Chen, you ride with us. Marco, handle this. I want answers by the time I'm done saving my family. Boss, Marco started. Handle it. Raphael was already moving toward the door, Elena in his arms, Chen trailing behind. I don't care what you have to do. I want Nico Caruso, and I want him alive. I have questions only he can answer. They moved through the ballroom, and Elena was dimly aware of the frozen guests, the shocked faces, the way people scattered like leaves before a storm. Raphael didn't look at any of them. His entire focus was on her, on the child she carried, on getting them somewhere safe. In the private elevator reserved for VIPs, Elena felt her vision starting to blur again. She could hear Raphael talking to her, demanding she stay awake, stay with him, but his voice seemed to be coming from very far away. The last thing she saw before the darkness took her was his face, the fear finally breaking through the control, and the absolute conviction in his eyes that he would burn the entire city down if that's what it took to keep them safe. Then the world went black, and Elena Marlowe slipped into unconsciousness, unaware that above her, Raphael Moretti was making silent promises to their unborn child. Promises written in blood and sealed with the kind of vengeance that would make the name Caruso something people whispered about in the dark for years to come. The vehicle was moving before Elena fully registered the transition from elevator to car. Not a car. An armored SUV, windows tinted black, engine purring with the kind of power that suggested it could ram through a concrete barrier without hesitation. Raphael had her cradled against his chest in the back seat, one arm wrapped around her shoulders, the other hand pressed flat against her abdomen as if he could hold their baby safe through sheer force of will. Doctor. Chen sat across from them, a portable monitor already strapped to Elena's arm, leads attached to her chest beneath Raphael's jacket that still draped over her shoulders. The numbers on the screen meant nothing to Elena, but she watched Chen's face and saw the concern he was trying to hide. Talk to me, Raphael said, his voice tight. Blood pressure is dropping, heart rate elevated but steady. Without imaging, I can't confirm internal bleeding, but based on presentation... Chen trailed off, choosing his words carefully. We need to be prepared for emergency intervention. The SUV took a corner fast enough that Elena felt herself pressed harder against Raphael's chest. Through the tinted windows, she caught glimpses of Manhattan streaming past, streetlights, late-night traffic, the illuminated windows of buildings where normal people were living normal lives that didn't involve poison and crime lords and babies fighting for survival. How long? Raphael's question was clipped, controlled. 15 minutes to the facility, the driver called back. Elena recognized the voice. Vincent Carr, one of Raphael's most trusted men, former army ranger who drove like he was still dodging IEDs in Kandahar. Make it 10. The SUV accelerated and Elena closed her eyes against another wave of pain that radiated from her abdomen. It felt different now. Not the churning nausea of the poison, but something deeper, something that made her think of tearing and breaking and things coming apart that were supposed to stay together. Raphael, she whispered, and even she could hear the fear in her voice. His hand tightened on her shoulder. I've got you. We're almost there, cara mia. Just hold on. The baby is going to be fine. He said it like a command, like he could bend reality to his will through pure determination. Maybe he could. Raphael Moretti had built an empire by refusing to accept defeat, by finding angles and leverage points and ways to win when everyone else saw only obstacles. But biology didn't care about empire building or determination. Biology had its own rules, and right now those rules were working against them. Elena forced her eyes open, focusing on Raphael's face. In the dim light of the SUV's interior, she could see the muscle jumping in his jaw, the way his eyes kept flicking to the monitor, the absolute control he was exerting over himself. She'd seen him angry before, had watched him dismantle opponents with cold precision, but she'd never seen him like this, balanced on a razor's edge between control and chaos, held together by nothing but sheer will and the need to be strong for her. Tell me about the facility, she said, needing to hear his voice, needing the distraction from the pain. Raphael's eyes met hers, and she saw him understand what she was asking for. Private medical center in Tribeca. I acquired it 3 years ago. Officially, it's a cosmetic surgery clinic for the very wealthy and very private. In reality, it's a fully equipped hospital with a surgical suite that could handle a triple bypass or a gunshot wound with equal efficiency. You've used it before. Not a question. When discretion is more important than paperwork, yes. His thumb traced circles on her shoulder, the gesture absent and soothing. The staff is handpicked. The best cardiac surgeon in New York, a trauma specialist who did 2 tours in Afghanistan, an OB/GYN who trained at Johns Hopkins, and decided she preferred patients who paid in cash and didn't ask questions. Sounds like my kind of place, Elena managed, trying for humor, even as another spike of pain made her gasp. Dr. Chen leaned forward, checking the monitor. Raphael, her blood pressure just dropped another 5 points. We're running out of time. The SUV's engine roared, and Vincent took another corner in a way that suggested traffic laws were more like suggestions. Elena could hear sirens somewhere in the distance, but they were fading, not approaching. Vincent knew how to drive in New York, fast, aggressive, and completely aware of every cop's patrol pattern within a 5-mile radius. Raphael pulled out his phone with his free hand, never releasing his hold on Elena. "Status," he said without preamble. Marco's voice came through the speaker, rough with adrenaline. "Caruso's primary residence is empty. His club downtown is shut down for the night, but we have eyes on it. 3 of his lieutenants have been located. We're bringing them in for conversation." Vivian Sterling, secured at the warehouse on 10th Avenue. The event coordinator and the waiter are with her. The catering manager turned out to be clean, just an idiot who didn't ask the right questions. I sent him home. "And Nico?" There was a pause. "We're working on it. He's gone to ground, but he can't hide forever. Every asset we have is looking." Raphael's expression went flat, the mask settling back into place. "Marco, I need Nico Caruso in front of me within the next 6 hours. I need him conscious, functional, and able to answer questions. I don't care what you have to do to make that happen. Am I clear?" "Crystal." "Good. Keep me updated." Raphael ended the call and returned his full attention to Elena. "We're 2 minutes out." Elena nodded, not trusting her voice. The pain was constant now, a deep ache that felt like something fundamental was wrong, like her body was betraying the tiny life it was supposed to protect. She thought about the moment she'd realized she was pregnant, the positive test, the shock, the complicated tangle of fear and joy and absolute terror about what it meant. She'd known from the start that raising a child with Raphael Moretti would be dangerous, had understood intellectually that any son or daughter of his would live under constant threat, would grow up in a world where bodyguards and security protocols were as normal as playdates and soccer practice. But intellectual understanding was different from this, from actually feeling that danger, from having someone try to end her baby's life before it had even begun, from understanding that there were people who would kill an innocent child just to hurt Raphael, to gain leverage, to shift the balance of power in a world Elena had never wanted to be part of. The SUV pulled into an underground garage, the door rolling shut behind them before Vincent even cut the engine. Fluorescent lights flickered on, revealing a parking area that held 3 other vehicles, all expensive, all armored, all bearing the subtle modifications that suggested they were designed for situations where traffic laws and conventional escape routes weren't options. Raphael had the door open before the SUV fully stopped, lifting Elena with the same careful intensity he'd maintained since the ballroom. A team was waiting, 2 men in tactical gear who moved to flank them, and a woman in scrubs who Elena assumed was the OB/GYN Raphael had mentioned. "Dr. Sarah Reeves," the woman said briskly, falling into step beside them as they moved toward an elevator. "I've been briefed on the situation. Suspected poisoning, approximately 4 months gestation, presenting with abdominal pain and possible internal bleeding." "Can you save them?" Raphael's question was blunt, direct. "Doctor." Reeves met his eyes without flinching. "I'm going to do everything I can, but I need you to understand that at 4 months, if we're forced to deliver, the survival rate is extremely low. Almost 0, in fact. Then we don't deliver." "Raphael." Dr. Reeves stopped walking, forcing him to stop as well. "If Elena is bleeding internally, if the placenta has separated or there's been significant trauma, we may not have a choice. I can try to save the pregnancy, but my first priority has to be saving your wife." "She's not my wife," Raphael said automatically, then seemed to hear himself. His jaw tightened. "But you're right. Save Elena, whatever it takes." The elevator opened directly into what looked like a high-end medical suite, gleaming equipment, monitors, a surgical theater visible through glass walls. The decor was more luxury hotel than hospital, all warm woods and soft lighting, but the medical technology was cutting edge and deadly serious. Raphael placed Elena on a hospital bed with infinite gentleness, his hands lingering on her shoulders as if he couldn't quite bring himself to let go. Dr. Reeves was already moving, pulling on gloves, snapping orders to a nurse who appeared from a side room. "I need ultrasound, full blood panel, and get me 4 units on standby just in case," Reeves said. "Dr. Chen, what toxin are we dealing with?" Chen was pulling off his jacket, rolling up his sleeves. "Unknown. Symptoms presented as acute poisoning, nausea, vomiting, altered mental status, tachycardia. She purged most of it, which likely prevented a lethal dose. But we need to identify it to counter any ongoing effects. Blood work will help." Reeves was positioning the ultrasound wand, her eyes on the monitor. "Elena, this is going to be cold." The gel was indeed cold, shocking against Elena's skin. She watched Reeves's face as the doctor moved the wand across her abdomen, searching, assessing. Raphael stood at the head of the bed, one hand gripping Elena's, the other braced against the bed rail hard enough that his knuckles had gone white. The room filled with sound, a rapid thumping that took Elena a moment to recognize. Her baby's heartbeat, fast and fluttery, like a bird trapped in a cage. "Fetal heart rate is 180, Reeves said, her voice professionally neutral. "Elevated, but within survivable range. Let me check for bleeding." The seconds stretched into hours. Elena could feel Raphael's tension through his hand, could sense the barely controlled fear radiating off him in waves. This was a man who controlled everything in his world through force of will and careful strategy, and right now he was completely powerless. "No visible placental abruption," Reeves said finally, and Elena felt Raphael's grip loosen fractionally. "No obvious hemorrhaging. The cramping you're feeling is likely uterine irritation from the toxin, possibly early contractions, but I'm not seeing active labor." "So the baby's okay?" Elena asked, her voice small. "The baby is stressed but stable. You, however, are another story." Reeves moved the wand higher, her frown deepening. "You have fluid accumulating in your peritoneal cavity. Not a lot, but enough to concern me. Could be from the toxin causing vascular permeability, could be minor internal bleeding we can't visualize yet. Either way, I want you on complete bed rest with continuous monitoring." "For how long?" "Until I'm confident you're both out of danger. Minimum 48 hours, possibly longer." Raphael's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then back at Elena. "I need to take this." "Go," Elena said, even though every part of her wanted him to stay. "I'm okay. Dr. Reeves has me." He hesitated, war playing out across his face, the need to be with her versus the need to hunt down the people responsible. Finally, he bent and pressed his lips to her forehead, the gesture so tender it made her chest ache. "I'll be right outside," he murmured. "You need me, you call. Anything, cara mia, anything at all." Then he was gone, stepping into the hallway, and Elena could hear his voice through the partially open door, sharp and commanding, as he took Marco's call. Dr. Reeves adjusted the IV, her movements efficient. "He's terrified," she observed quietly. "Raphael doesn't do terrified." "Everyone does terrified when it's someone they love." Reeves smiled slightly. "I've known Raphael Moretti for 5 years. Treated gunshot wounds, knife injuries, one memorable case involving a broken bottle and truly impressive loss of blood. Never seen him rattled. But you've got him completely undone." Elena didn't know what to say to that. She and Raphael had never defined what they were to each other. Lovers, yes, but beyond that? They danced around the question for months, both of them too scared or too practical to put words to the thing that had grown between them. "The pregnancy was unplanned," Elena heard herself say. "The best ones usually are." Reeves was adjusting monitors now, her attention split between Elena and the screens showing vital signs. "For what it's worth, I think you're going to be fine. The baby, too. Whatever toxin was used, you didn't absorb enough for a lethal dose, and your body is handling it. But the stress, the trauma, that we need to manage carefully." From the hallway, Elena could hear Raphael's voice rising, not quite shouting, but close. The kind of cold fury that was somehow more frightening than rage. "I don't care if you have to tear apart every building in Lower Manhattan. Find him. Find Nico Caruso and bring him to me. A pause, then. No, Marco. Not dead. I want him alive. I want him conscious. I want him to understand exactly what he's done and exactly what it's going to cost him. Another pause. Do it! And Marco? Anyone who gets in your way, anyone who tries to protect him, anyone who even thinks about warning him, they made their choice. Handle them accordingly. Elena closed her eyes, trying not to think about what handle them accordingly meant in Raphael's world. Trying not to imagine the violence that was being unleashed right now across the city, all because someone had tried to hurt her and their baby. You knew what he was when you fell for him, Reeves said quietly, as if reading her thoughts. I did, Elena admitted. Doesn't make it easier. Nothing about loving dangerous men is easy. Reeves checked the monitor one more time, then patted Elena's shoulder. Get some rest. I'll be back in an hour to check on you both. Rest seemed impossible, but exhaustion was pulling at Elena like a riptide. The adrenaline was fading, leaving her wrung out and shaky. She could still hear Raphael in the hallway, giving orders, coordinating the hunt, orchestrating what was probably going to be a bloodbath before sunrise. She must have dozed, because the next thing she knew, Raphael was beside her again, settled into a chair he'd pulled close to the bed. His hand was wrapped around hers, and his eyes were fixed on the monitor, showing their baby's heartbeat with an intensity that suggested he was memorizing every spike and valley. What time is it? Elena asked, her voice rough with sleep. 3 a.m. Raphael didn't look away from the monitor. How are you feeling? Better. Tired, but better. She squeezed his hand. Did Marco find anything? Nico's gone to ground, but we're closing in. 3 of his lieutenants are currently having very unpleasant conversations at the warehouse. One of them will break. They always do. Elena heard what he wasn't saying. The methods being used to encourage conversation, the line between interrogation and torture that Raphael crossed without hesitation when people he cared about were threatened. Raphael, I need to ask you something. Anything. If you find Nico, what are you going to do to him? Raphael's eyes finally left the monitor, meeting hers. In the low light of the medical suite, his face was all sharp angles and dangerous shadows. I'm going to make him tell me everyone involved in this. Everyone who knew, everyone who helped, everyone who even suspected what was being planned and didn't warn me. And then I'm going to make sure they understand that touching my family carries consequences. You mean you're going to kill him? Eventually. Raphael's voice was matter-of-fact, as if they were discussing dinner plans. But first, I'm going to make sure he regrets every decision that led him to this moment. I'm going to make an example that ensures nobody else ever thinks about trying this again. Elena should have been horrified, should have argued, should have pleaded for mercy, should have reminded him that revenge wouldn't undo what had happened. Instead, she found herself thinking about the moment she'd collapsed, about the fear that had flooded through her when she'd realized something was wrong with her baby, about the fact that someone had deliberately, calculatedly tried to end her pregnancy simply to hurt Raphael. Good, she said quietly. Raphael's eyebrows rose fractionally. Elena, I mean it. Whoever did this, whoever helped, they tried to kill our baby, Raphael. They tried to kill me. So yes, I want them to regret it. I want them to understand what they've done. Something shifted in Raphael's expression. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. You've never talked like this before. I've never been poisoned while pregnant before. Elena's hand moved to her abdomen, protective. I've never felt this angry before. This territorial. Welcome to my world. Raphael lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. This is what I feel every day. This need to protect what's mine, to destroy anything that threatens it. I've tried to keep you separate from it, tried to give you the option to walk away, but now there's a baby, Elena finished. Now walking away isn't an option, even if I wanted to, which I don't, she added quickly, seeing the flash of vulnerability in his eyes. Raphael, I'm not going anywhere. I'm in this complicated, dangerous life. All in. It's going to get worse before it gets better, he warned. Once word spreads about the pregnancy, about what happened tonight, every enemy I have will see you as a target, see our child as leverage. I can protect you, but I can't make it safe. I can't make it normal. I don't need normal. Elena managed a tired smile. I need you. I need us to figure out how to do this, how to raise a child in your world without losing ourselves or each other in the process. Raphael was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing patterns on the back of her hand. I never wanted this, he said finally. Never wanted to bring a child into my life knowing what it would mean, knowing the danger, the complications, the way it would paint a target on an innocent back. But now that it's happening, now that I know there's a piece of you and me growing inside you. He paused, choosing words carefully. I can't imagine not fighting for this with everything I have. Can't imagine walking away or letting fear make my decisions. Elena's heart did something complicated in her chest. Raphael wasn't a man given to emotional declarations. He showed his feelings through actions, through protection, through loyalty, through the way he'd burned down half the city tonight trying to keep her safe. But words mattered too. Words made things real. We're going to be okay, she said, with more confidence than she felt. All three of us. Raphael's phone buzzed again. He glanced at it, and his expression went cold. Marco's calling in. I need to take this. He stepped into the hallway again, and Elena heard his voice, clipped and professional. Talk to me. She couldn't hear Marco's response, but she watched Raphael's body language through the open door, the way he went absolutely still, the slight narrowing of his eyes, the almost imperceptible forward shift of his weight like a predator catching a scent. You're certain? Raphael asked. Another pause. Good. Hold position. I'm coming to you. He ended the call and stepped back into the room. They found Nico. Elena's heart rate spiked, and she saw the monitor reflect it, numbers jumping, alarms starting to sound before Reeves appeared from the next room and silenced it with a touch. Everything okay? The doctor asked, her eyes moving between Elena and Raphael. Fine, Elena said. False alarm. Reeves looked skeptical but didn't argue. Try to keep your stress levels down. Easier said than done, I know, but for the baby's sake. When she was gone, Raphael returned to Elena's bedside. I need to go handle this. I know. I don't want to leave you. I know that too. Elena reached up, cupping his face in her hand. But you need to finish this. You need to make sure whoever did this can never try again. Dr. Reeves will stay with you. Vincent and 2 others will be stationed outside. Nobody gets in without clearance. Nobody gets close without going through them first. Raphael, I'll be fine. Go do what you need to do. He bent down, pressing his forehead to hers, and Elena felt the tremor run through him, the only outward sign of the war being waged inside him between the need for revenge and the need to stay and protect. I love you, he said, the words so quiet she almost missed them. I've never said it before, never let myself feel it, but I'm saying it now. I love you, Elena Marlowe. I love our baby, and I will burn this entire city to ash before I let anyone threaten you again. Elena's breath caught. Raphael, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know, in case... He trailed off. In case what? You think you're not coming back? I think I'm about to do things that might make you look at me differently. Things that might change how you feel about me. Elena pulled him down until their lips met, the kiss fierce and desperate and absolutely certain. I already know who you are, she whispered against his mouth. I know what you're capable of, and I love you anyway. I love you because of it, not in spite of it. Raphael kissed her again, harder this time, pouring everything he couldn't say into the press of his lips against hers. Then he pulled back, his hand lingering on her face for one more moment before he forced himself to step away. I'll be back before dawn, he promised. With answers? With everything. His smile was cold and absolutely lethal. By the time I'm done, Nico Caruso is going to wish we'd just killed him in the ballroom. Then he was gone, striding out of the medical suite with the controlled violence of a man about to go to war. Elena heard the elevator doors close, heard the SUV's engine roar to life in the garage below. She was alone now, except for the medical equipment and the security guards outside, and the tiny heartbeat on the monitor that proved she wasn't really alone at all. Dr. Reeves returned, checking vitals one more time. He's going to kill someone tonight, isn't he? Probably several someones, Elena said honestly. And you're okay with that? Elena thought about the question, really thought about it. Thought about the woman she'd been before Raphael, the one who'd believed in law and order and civilized solutions to problems. The one who'd never imagined herself falling for a criminal, let alone carrying his child. That woman was gone, burned away the moment someone had tried to poison her and her baby at a charity gala. They tried to kill my child, Elena said quietly. So yes, I'm okay with Raphael making sure they can never try again. I'm okay with him doing whatever needs to be done to protect our family. Reeves nodded slowly. Then I hope he makes it count. He will, Elena said with absolute certainty. Raphael always does. She closed her eyes, one hand resting on her abdomen where their baby was fighting to survive, and tried not to think about what Raphael was doing across the city. Tried not to imagine the violence, the interrogations, the cold precision with which he would dismantle everyone involved in tonight's attack. But sleep wouldn't come. So instead, Elena lay in the darkness and listened to her baby's heartbeat on the monitor, and waited for Raphael to come back to her with blood on his hands and vengeance in his eyes. And somewhere in the night, in a warehouse on the edge of the city, Nico Caruso was about to learn why threatening Raphael Moretti's family was the last mistake he would ever make. The warehouse on 10th Avenue had seen better days. Correction, it had seen better decades. The building squatted between a defunct textile factory and a parking lot that serviced exactly nobody, its brick facade stained with decades of city grime and neglect. But the decrepit exterior was deliberate camouflage. Inside, the warehouse had been converted into something far more functional: soundproofed rooms, reinforced doors, and enough security measures to make a federal lockup jealous. Raphael's SUV pulled into the loading bay at 3:47 a.m. Vincent killed the engine but didn't move to get out, waiting for Raphael's signal. Through the windshield, Raphael could see Marco standing near the entrance, talking on his phone, his expression grim. "Stay with the vehicle, idiot," Raphael said, already opening the door. "Engine running. If I call, you get to the medical facility in under 8 minutes. Understood?" "Yes, sir." Raphael crossed the distance to Marco in long, controlled strides. Every step was measured, every movement precise. He'd learned long ago that control was everything. Control of his emotions, his reactions, his empire. Lose control, and you lost everything. But tonight, control was slipping. Tonight, someone had tried to kill Elena and his unborn child, and the rage simmering beneath Raphael's carefully maintained surface was threatening to burn through every restraint he'd ever built. "Status," Raphael said as he reached Marco. Marco pocketed his phone, his expression carefully neutral. "We've got 3 Caruso lieutenants in separate rooms. Antonio Russo broke first, gave us Nico's location in exchange for a promise we wouldn't touch his family. The other 2 are being less cooperative, but they will be." "And Nico?" "Holed up in a townhouse in Brooklyn Heights, one of his girlfriend's places. Not commonly known, not on any property records we'd normally check. He thinks he's safe there." "How many with him?" "Best guess, 2, maybe 3 guards. He's trying to stay off the radar, which means he can't bring in his full security detail without drawing attention." Raphael nodded slowly, already calculating angles and approaches. "The girlfriend?" "Collateral damage or leverage, depending on how cooperative she is." Marco's voice held no sympathy. In their world, choosing to be with someone like Nico Caruso meant accepting the consequences of that choice. "I want him alive," Raphael said. "Functional enough to answer questions. Everything else is negotiable." "Understood." Marco turned toward the warehouse entrance. "You want to talk to the lieutenants first?" "No. I want to see Vivian Sterling." Something flickered across Marco's face. Surprise, maybe, or concern. "Boss, she's just a middleman, paid intermediary. She doesn't know anything the lieutenants don't." "She knew Elena was pregnant." Raphael's voice went cold. "She confirmed it, reported it, and then orchestrated the poisoning. That makes her more than a middleman, Marco. That makes her complicit in attempted murder of my child." Marco nodded once and led the way inside. The warehouse interior was exactly what Raphael had designed it to be: functional, intimidating, and absolutely secure. Concrete floors, exposed ductwork, and lighting that created more shadows than illumination. The main space held various equipment that could charitably be called persuasion tools, though Raphael preferred to think of them as motivation enhancers. 3 doors led to separate interrogation rooms. Marco gestured to the one on the left. Sterling's in there. Hasn't said anything useful since we brought her in. Keeps demanding her lawyer. She'll talk, Raphael said with certainty. He opened the door without knocking. Vivian Sterling sat in a metal chair, her red dress now wrinkled and stained, her jewelry removed, her carefully styled hair falling in disarray around her face. She looked up as Raphael entered, and fear flashed across her features before she managed to school them into indignant anger. "This is kidnapping," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "False imprisonment. I have rights. You forfeited your rights when you tried to kill my family." Raphael pulled up a second chair, sitting down across from her with deliberate calm. "Now, we're going to have a conversation, Vivian. A very honest conversation about exactly what you've done and who you've done it for." "I want my lawyer." "Your lawyer is currently asleep in his Upper East Side apartment, completely unaware that you're here. He'll remain unaware unless I decide otherwise." Raphael leaned back, studying her with the same attention he'd give to a balance sheet or a property acquisition. "You're a smart woman, Vivian. Smart enough to build a reputation, smart enough to move in the right circles. So be smart now. Tell me everything." Vivian's hands were trembling. She clasped them together in her lap, trying to hide the reaction. "I already told you, Nico Caruso paid me to confirm the pregnancy. That's all I know." "That's not all." Raphael's voice remained conversational, almost pleasant. "You orchestrated the staffing change. You identified Elena specifically to the waiter. You ensured she received a poisoned glass. These weren't the actions of someone just confirming information, Vivian. These were the actions of someone actively participating in murder." "I didn't know it was poison." The words burst out of her, desperate and pleading. "I swear I didn't know. Nico said he just wanted her scared, just wanted to send a message to you. I thought it was a sedative, maybe something to make her sick enough to go to the hospital. I didn't know he was trying to kill her." Raphael studied her face, looking for the lie. He'd interrogated enough people to know when they were spinning truth and when they were fabricating wholesale. Vivian believed what she was saying, believed that Nico had only wanted to frighten Elena, which meant Nico had lied to his own accomplice, ensuring her cooperation while keeping her ignorant of the true plan. Smart, in a ruthless sort of way. Deniability for Vivian, separation between planning and execution. "Why you?" Raphael asked. "Why did Nico choose you specifically?" Vivian swallowed hard. "He approached me 3 months ago, said he knew I had gambling debts, knew I was in deep with some very unpleasant people. He offered to clear the debts in exchange for information." "What kind of information?" "About you, about Elena, your routines, your relationship, whether there was any truth to the rumors that she was pregnant." Vivian's eyes filled with tears. "I needed the money, Raphael. The people I owed, they were threatening my daughter. I had no choice." Everyone always had a choice. That's what Raphael had learned in his years building his empire. Sometimes the choices were all terrible, sometimes they were between bad and worse, but there was always a choice. Vivian had chosen to betray Elena to protect her own daughter. Understandable, even sympathetic in its own twisted way. But understanding didn't equal forgiveness. "How did you confirm the pregnancy?" Raphael asked. "I hired a private investigator. He followed Elena, documented her visiting an OB-GYN in Soho, confirmed the appointment type. I gave that information to Nico, and he paid the first installment on my debt." "And tonight's arrangement?" "He called me yesterday, said he needed one more favor, said it would clear the remaining debt. He told me to arrange for a specific waiter to serve champagne to Elena, told me which glass to ensure she received. He said it was a sedative, something that would make her sick enough to scare her, to remind you that he could reach your family if he wanted to." Vivian's voice broke. "I swear, I didn't know it was meant to kill her. I didn't know about the baby being in danger. I would never. Children are sacred, Raphael. I would never hurt a child." Raphael sat very still, processing this information. Nico had played Vivian perfectly, used her debts, her fear for her daughter, her desperation. Had fed her just enough truth mixed with lies to ensure cooperation without full knowledge. It was good strategy. Ruthless, effective, and ultimately stupid because it had led directly back to Nico himself. "What else did you tell him?" Raphael asked. What other information did you provide over the last 3 months? Vivian's eyes dropped to her lap. Everything I could learn. Your schedule, your properties, your business meetings, Elena's routines, her friends, her work on that brownstone project. I was at events you both attended, society functions where I could observe without seeming suspicious. Did you report to anyone besides Nico? No, just him. Always him. Raphael stood and Vivian flinched. Please, she whispered. Please, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I never wanted anyone to get hurt. Your intentions are irrelevant. Raphael's voice was flat, emotionless. Your actions are what matter, and your actions tonight resulted in my fiancé being poisoned while carrying my child. Vivian went white. Fiancé, I didn't know you were... We hadn't announced it yet, Raphael lied smoothly. The fiction served multiple purposes. It elevated the crime in the eyes of anyone who heard about it, and it gave him legal standing in ways that girlfriend wouldn't. Which makes your betrayal even more interesting, Vivian. You helped orchestrate an attack on my future wife and unborn heir. In my world, that carries very specific consequences. What are you going to do to me? Raphael walked to the door, paused with his hand on the handle. That depends on whether the information you've provided proves accurate. If Nico is where you say he is, if everything you've told me checks out, then you live. Your daughter lives. You'll be relocated somewhere far from New York, somewhere you can start over without the debts and the fear and the stupid choices. Hope flared in Vivian's eyes. Really? You do that? But, Raphael continued, his voice going cold, if you've lied to me, if any of this is misdirection designed to buy Nico time or throw us off his trail, then you and your daughter will disappear, completely, permanently. No one will ever find enough of you to file a missing persons report. The hope died as quickly as it had appeared. I'm telling the truth. I swear on my daughter's life, I'm telling the truth. Raphael studied her one more moment, then nodded. Marco will get a formal statement from you. Every detail, every interaction with Nico, every piece of information you passed along. You cooperate fully, and you might survive this. He left her there and found Marco waiting in the hallway. Get everything from her. Times, dates, exact conversations. I want a complete timeline of her involvement with Nico. And then? Hold her here until this is finished. If her information is good, arrange transport out of the city. New identity, new life, somewhere she can't cause any more damage. Marco nodded, making notes on his phone. The lieutenants are ready when you are. I don't need to talk to them. Raphael checked his watch, 4:15 a.m. Dawn was still hours away, but time was moving too fast. I need to move on Nico before he realizes we're coming. What's our tactical situation? Team is ready, 6 men, all experienced. The townhouse has 3 floors, basement access through a garden entrance. Minimal security. Nico's relying on secrecy, not force. Cameras? Being handled now. We'll have a 5-minute window where the security feed loops. Neighbors are far enough away that noise won't be an immediate issue, but we need to be fast. Raphael nodded, his mind already running through scenarios and contingencies. I want Nico alive and conscious. His guards are expendable if they resist, but the priority is securing Nico himself. Understood. Marco hesitated. Boss, you sure you want to be on site for this? You could coordinate from here. Let the team handle the extraction. No. Raphael's voice was absolute. Nico tried to kill my family. I need to look him in the eye when he realizes what that's cost him. They moved through the warehouse to the staging area, where 6 men in tactical gear were checking weapons and equipment. Raphael recognized them all. Former military, former law enforcement, all of them with the kind of experience and moral flexibility that made them valuable in situations where legal niceties were obstacles rather than guidelines. Listen up, Raphael said, and the room went quiet. Target is Nico Caruso, heir to the Caruso crime family. He's holed up in a townhouse in Brooklyn Heights with minimal security. Our objective is capture, not kill. I want him alive, functional, and able to answer questions. His guards are secondary. If they surrender, we take them. If they fight, we put them down. Questions? One of the men raised a hand. Rules of engagement on civilians? There's a girlfriend in the house. She's not the target, but she's not protected either. If she's smart, she stays out of the way. If she gets involved, Handle it. The men nodded, understanding the parameters. In their world, loyalty to someone like Nico Caruso meant accepting that protection was conditional. They loaded into 3 vehicles: Raphael's SUV, an unmarked van that could pass for a delivery vehicle, and a sedan that would serve as chase car if things went sideways. The convoy moved through the pre-dawn Manhattan streets, crossing into Brooklyn via the Manhattan Bridge. Brooklyn Heights was one of the city's more prestigious neighborhoods, all historic brownstones and tree-lined streets, and the kind of quiet wealth that didn't advertise itself. The townhouse Nico had chosen was on a corner lot, 3 stories of restored Victorian architecture that probably cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. The vehicles parked 2 blocks away. Raphael's team moved on foot, using the pre-dawn darkness and the neighborhood's sleeping residents as cover. Marco had already confirmed that the security cameras were looping. Nico would see nothing but an empty street on his monitors. Raphael positioned himself across the street, watching as his team split into 2 groups. The first approached the front entrance, while the second circled to the garden access and back. They moved with practiced efficiency, weapons ready but not raised, looking for all the world like maintenance workers arriving early for a job. The front door lock took Marco exactly 43 seconds to bypass. Raphael watched him work, counting in his head, calculating the margin of error. They needed to be inside and in control before Nico even knew they were there. Marco gave the signal, go. The teams entered simultaneously from front and back, moving fast and quiet. Raphael followed the front team, ascending the steps with weapon drawn, eyes scanning for threats. The first floor was clear: living room, kitchen, dining area, all empty and dark. The second floor yielded a bathroom and 2 bedrooms, also empty. That left the third floor where lights were still on and voices could be heard. Raphael gestured for silence, then led the way up the final staircase. The voices grew clear: a woman's, nervous and pleading, and a man's, angry and dismissive. "I don't care what you think you heard," Nico was saying. "Nobody knows we're here. We're safe." "It's been hours," the woman said. "If it worked, we'd have heard by now. If Moretti's bitch is dead, it would be on the news. She's not dead, she's just sick. That was the point. Scare Moretti, make him understand that his family isn't untouchable." Raphael felt something cold and lethal settle in his chest. Nico hadn't even been trying to kill Elena. He'd been sending a message, playing power games with people's lives, treating Raphael's family as pawns in whatever empire-building strategy he'd concocted. That somehow made it worse. Raphael kicked open the door to the master bedroom. Nico Caruso spun around, his hand reaching for a gun on the nightstand. He never made it. One of Raphael's men put 2 rounds into the nightstand itself, the wood exploding in splinters, the gun skittering across the floor. "Don't move," Raphael said quietly. Nico froze. He was younger than Raphael, maybe 32 or 33, with the kind of slick confidence that came from being born into power rather than earning it. His silk pajamas probably cost more than the average monthly rent, and his expression held more annoyance than fear. That would change. The woman, blonde, mid-20s, wearing nothing but an oversized t-shirt, screamed. One of Raphael's men moved to secure her, zip-tying her hands and pulling her away from Nico. "Raphael Moretti," Nico said, his voice attempting confidence and almost succeeding. "Breaking and entering. Armed assault. My lawyers are going to have a field day with this." "Your lawyers are going to have trouble finding enough of you to file paperwork," Raphael replied, moving further into the room. "Marco, secure the house. I want every entrance locked down, every phone disabled, every camera erased." "On it." Raphael turned his full attention back to Nico. "You tried to kill my fiancée tonight. I tried to scare her. There's a difference." "Not to me." Raphael raised his weapon, the movement casual but absolutely controlled. "Not when she's 4 months pregnant with my child." Nico's confidence flickered. "Pregnant? I didn't—" Vivian said a lot of things. Most of them under the mistaken impression that you were just trying to frighten Elena, not poison her. Raphael lowered the gun, but only slightly. "Tell me, Nico, when exactly did you decide that targeting my family was a smart strategic move?" "Your family?" Nico laughed, the sound nervous and too loud. "She's your girlfriend, Moretti, a side piece. This is business, not personal." Raphael moved faster than Nico could react. crossing the distance between them and slamming him against the wall hard enough to rattle the expensive artwork hanging there. The gun pressed against Nico's temple, cold metal against warm skin. "Say that again," Raphael whispered. "Call her a side piece one more time, and I'll paint this very expensive wallpaper with your brains." Nico's eyes went wide, real fear finally breaking through the bravado. Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't mean... You didn't mean to poison a pregnant woman? You didn't mean to try to kill my unborn child? You didn't mean to start a war you have absolutely no chance of winning?" Raphael pressed the gun harder against Nico's temple. "Which part didn't you mean, Nico?" "The baby," Nico gasped. "I swear I didn't know about the baby. Vivian confirmed she was pregnant, but I thought you wouldn't care. Thought it was just some accident you'd pay to make go away." You didn't think, Raphael agreed. "That's been your problem since the day your father died and left you in charge of an empire you're not smart enough to run. You don't think, Nico. You react. You make moves without understanding the consequences. You play games with people who are better at this than you'll ever be." He pulled the gun back but didn't lower it. "Here's what's going to happen now. You're going to tell me everyone involved in tonight's attack. Every person who knew, every person who helped, every person who even suspected what you were planning. And then you're going to help me dismantle every single one of them. And if I refuse?" Raphael smiled, and Nico went absolutely pale. "Then I start with your girlfriend over there. Then I move to your mother, your sister, your 15-year-old nephew who just got accepted to Princeton. Then I work my way through your entire organization until everyone you've ever cared about understands what it costs to threaten my family." The color drained from Nico's face. "You wouldn't. My family had nothing to do with this. Neither did my unborn child." Raphael's voice went absolutely flat. "You made this personal, Nico. You brought family into it, so now we play by those rules." Nico was shaking now, all the confidence gone, replaced by the dawning realization that he'd made a catastrophic miscalculation. "What do you want to know?" "Everything." What followed was a masterclass in interrogation. Raphael didn't need violence, though violence was implied in every word, every gesture, every reminder of exactly what Raphael was capable of when someone threatened the people he loved. Nico talked because talking was the only option that ended with him and his family intact. The conspiracy was larger than Raphael had initially suspected. 3 Caruso lieutenants had been involved, along with the event coordinator, Vivian Sterling, and a pharmaceutical consultant who'd provided the poison. The consultant had assured Nico it would only cause severe illness, not death, though whether that was true or whether Nico had simply chosen to believe it was debatable. "The poison," Raphael said. "What was it?" "Synthetic compound, something the consultant developed. Supposed to mimic food poisoning, cause symptoms severe enough to hospitalize but not kill. He said pregnant women were more susceptible, that it would make her really sick but wouldn't hurt the baby." Raphael felt rage flood through him, hot and immediate. The casual way Nico discussed poisoning Elena, as if it were a business transaction rather than attempted murder, made Raphael want to put a bullet through his skull and deal with the consequences later. But Elena was alive. Their baby was alive. And Nico had information Raphael still needed. "The consultant's name and location," Raphael demanded. Nico provided both. A former pharmaceutical researcher named Dr. Gerald Kemp, currently operating a private lab in New Jersey, where he developed custom compounds for clients who preferred not to involve legitimate medical facilities. "Who else?" Raphael asked. "Who else in your organization knew about the plan?" "Just the 3 lieutenants. Marco has them already, right? Antonio, Frank, and Sal. They helped coordinate everything, made sure Vivian had access to the right events, made sure the consultant could deliver the compound without being traced." "Your father," Raphael said. "Does he know?" Nico looked away, and Raphael saw the answer in his face before he spoke. "My father's retired. He doesn't get involved in day-to-day operations anymore." "That's not what I asked." "He knew I was making a move against you. Didn't know the specifics, but he knew I was trying to apply pressure, trying to weaken your position so we could expand into your territories." Raphael nodded slowly, processing this. Nico's father, Salvatore Caruso, was old-school crime, brutal when necessary, but with a code that didn't usually involve targeting families unless absolutely unavoidable. If Salvatore had known the full plan, he might have stopped it. Or he might not have cared. Retirement didn't erase decades of ruthless empire building. Where is he? Raphael asked. His estate in Connecticut. He's been there for 6 months, hasn't come into the city. Like I said, he's retired. Raphael's phone buzzed. He checked it without lowering his weapon. A text from Dr. Reeves. Elena stable. Baby's heartbeat normalizing, both resting comfortably. Relief flooded through him, so intense it was almost painful. They were okay. His family was okay, which meant Raphael could focus entirely on destroying the people who'd threatened them. Marco, Raphael called. Bring the van around. We're transporting Mr. Caruso to the warehouse for a more thorough conversation. Nico's eyes went wide. You said if I told you everything, I said I'd help you understand the consequences of your actions. Raphael's smile was cold. We're just getting started. They bound Nico's hands and feet, gagged him to prevent screaming that might alert neighbors, and carried him down the stairs like a particularly unwilling piece of furniture. The girlfriend watched with terrified eyes but said nothing, smart enough to understand that silence was her only path to survival. As they loaded Nico into the van, Raphael's phone rang. Marco's name appeared on the screen. You're supposed to be helping load the van, Raphael said by way of greeting. I'm handling something else. We've got a problem. Raphael went still. Define problem. The pharmaceutical consultant, Dr. Kemp. We sent a team to his Jersey lab 30 minutes ago, found it burned to the ground, fire still smoldering. Fire department's calling it an accident, but my guys found accelerant traces. Someone torched the place, probably within the last 2 hours. And Kemp? Missing. No body in the rubble, no sign of him at his registered addresses. It's like he knew we were coming and ran. Raphael felt the pieces clicking into place with terrible clarity. Nico had a failsafe. Someone watching, ready to clean up loose ends if things went wrong. That's my read too, which means someone in the Caruso organization knows the plan failed and is already trying to cover tracks. Raphael thought fast, calculating angles and probabilities. The 3 lieutenants, get them on the phone. Now. I want to know who else they told. Who else had knowledge of tonight's operation? Someone gave the cleanup order, and I want to know who. On it. What about Nico? Raphael looked at the van where Nico was secured, bound and helpless. Bring him to the warehouse. We're not done with him yet, but be prepared. This just got more complicated. He ended the call and climbed into his SUV. Vincent was already behind the wheel, engine running. Back to the warehouse, Raphael ordered. And Vincent? Make it fast. We're running out of time. The convoy moved through Brooklyn's empty streets, heading back toward Manhattan. Raphael's mind was already 3 moves ahead, calculating which Caruso operations to hit first, which assets to seize, which allies to turn against them. But underneath the strategy, underneath the cold calculation of warfare and empire building, was something more visceral, the absolute certainty that before the sun rose, Nico Caruso would regret every decision that had led to this moment. Elena and their baby were safe. Now Raphael could focus on making sure they stayed that way, and that meant making an example that would echo through New York's underworld for generations to come. The warehouse felt different when Raphael returned. The space that had seemed merely functional an hour ago now carried the weight of what was about to happen. A reckoning that would reshape the balance of power in New York's underworld. The overhead lights cast harsh shadows across concrete floors that had seen their share of violence, and the air itself seemed to hold its breath in anticipation. Nico was dragged from the van, still bound and gagged, his silk pajamas incongruous against the industrial brutality of his surroundings. His eyes were wild now, darting from face to face, looking for mercy he wouldn't find. Raphael watched dispassionately as his men secured Nico to a chair in the central interrogation room, positioning him beneath a light that would make every expression, every lie, impossible to hide. Marco appeared at Raphael's shoulder, his phone still pressed to his ear. Antonio Russo is talking, says there was a contingency plan. If anything went wrong tonight, someone named Victor was supposed to clean up loose ends and get out of the city. Victor who? Russo doesn't know a last name. Says he's Salvatore Caruso's man, not Nico's. Been with the family for 20 years, handles the kind of problems that can't be solved with money or threats. Marco's expression was grim. Professional cleaner. If Kemp's lab is torched and the consultant is missing, Victor's already started working through the list. Raphael felt ice slide down his spine. What list? everyone involved in tonight's operation. Victor's job is to eliminate anyone who can connect the Caruso family to the poisoning. That includes Vivian Sterling, the 3 lieutenants, the event coordinator. Marco paused, his meaning clear. And Elena. Raphael's voice went absolutely flat. Victor knows she can identify everyone involved. She's the primary witness. Which makes her the primary target, yes. Raphael was already moving, phone out, dialing the medical facility. It rang twice before Dr. Reeves answered, her voice professional but concerned. Raphael, is everything... I need to know Elena's security status right now. Vincent posted guards at every entrance. No one's come through except my staff, and they're all accounted for. What's wrong? There's a cleaner working for the Caruso family. Professional, experienced, and currently eliminating everyone connected to tonight's attack. Elena is on that list. He heard Reeves' sharp intake of breath. I'll lock down the facility immediately. No one in or out without your personal authorization. Not good enough. I'm sending reinforcements, 10 men, heavily armed. They'll be there in 15 minutes. Until then, I want Elena in the most secure room you have, with at least 3 guards inside with her at all times. Raphael, she's sleeping. Moving her could stress the baby. If Victor gets to her, there won't be a baby to stress. Raphael's voice cut like a blade. Move her now, Dr. Reeves. Wake her up gently, explain the situation, but get her somewhere secure. Do it now. Understood. Raphael ended the call and turned to Marco. Pull everyone we can spare from other operations. I want that medical facility locked down like a fortress. Victor tries to get in. I want him stopped with extreme prejudice. Already making calls. Marco was working his phone with practiced efficiency. But boss, we've got another problem. The 3 lieutenants, if Victor's cleaning house, they're targets too, and they're all here, in our custody. If Victor knows where we took them, then he might come here instead of the medical facility. Raphael nodded slowly, seeing the tactical advantage. Good. Let him come. We'll be ready. He strode into the interrogation room where Nico sat bound and helpless. The younger man's eyes tracked Raphael's movement with the focused intensity of prey, watching a predator circle closer. Raphael removed Nico's gag with one sharp pull. Nico gasped for air, coughing. You can't do this. Your father sent Victor. Raphael's voice was conversational, almost pleasant. Professional cleaner, been with your family for 20 years. Currently working through a kill list that includes everyone involved in tonight's attack, including you, I'd imagine. The color drained from Nico's face. That's not... My father wouldn't... Your father is old school, Nico. He understands that loose ends are liabilities. And right now, you're the biggest loose end of all. Raphael pulled up a chair, sitting down directly in front of Nico. You failed to kill Elena. You failed to cover your tracks. You're sitting in my warehouse, surrounded by my men, ready to tell me everything I want to know about your organization. From your father's perspective, you're not an heir anymore. You're a problem that needs solving. He wouldn't kill his own son. Wouldn't he? Raphael leaned back, studying Nico's face. How many men has your father eliminated over the years? How many people who threatened his empire, who became liabilities, who knew too much? And you think he'll make an exception for you just because you share DNA? Nico's breathing was coming faster now, panic setting in as Raphael's words found their mark. If Victor's really cleaning house, then everyone's in danger. Your men, the people you're holding here. I'm counting on it. Raphael's smile was cold. See, Victor is good at his job, but he's used to working in the shadows, hitting soft targets who don't see him coming. He's not used to walking into a fortress designed for exactly this kind of assault. Understanding dawned in Nico's eyes. You're using us as bait. You want Victor to come here. I want Victor to try, because when he does, we'll have a conversation about who gave the cleanup order and why. And then I'll have leverage against your father that goes beyond just you. The door opened and Marco entered, his expression tense. Boss, we've got movement. 3 vehicles approaching from different directions, all of them suspicious. Could be Victor's team. Raphael stood, his hand moving to his weapon. How long? 5 minutes, maybe less. Lock it down. Nobody in, nobody out without my authorization. I want fields of fire established at every entrance, and I want eyes on those vehicles. If they're hostile, we engage the moment they show intent. Marco nodded and left, already shouting orders. Raphael turned back to Nico, who was now visibly shaking. "You're going to leave me here?" Nico's voice cracked. "If Victor comes, if he gets inside, then you better hope I'm right about my defenses." Raphael walked to the door, paused. "Your father made a choice, Nico. He chose to clean up your mess rather than protect you. That should tell you everything you need to know about where you stand in his empire." He left Nico there and moved to the warehouse's command center, a converted office space that held security monitors showing every angle of the building and the surrounding streets. Marco was already coordinating with the team, his voice calm and controlled despite the mounting tension. "Vehicle 1 is holding position 2 blocks east," Marco reported. "Sedan, 3 occupants, watching our entrance. Vehicle 2 is circling, looks like they're mapping our perimeter. Vehicle 3 just pulled into the parking lot across the street." Raphael studied the monitors, watching the vehicles move with coordinated precision. Professional work, military training, maybe law enforcement background. This is Victor's team. Do we engage? Not yet. Let them make the first move. I want to see their strategy before we show our hand. Raphael pulled out his phone, checking for updates from the medical facility. A text from Vincent confirmed that the additional security had arrived, and Elena was secure in a windowless room in the facility's basement, surrounded by enough firepower to hold off a small army. One less thing to worry about. The monitors showed movement, figures emerging from the vehicles, dressed in dark clothing, faces covered. They moved with the practiced efficiency of people who'd done this before, spreading out to cover multiple angles of approach. "Count?" Raphael asked. "9 that I can see. Could be more in reserve." Marco was watching the screens with intense focus. They're setting up for a coordinated breach, probably planning to hit multiple entrances simultaneously, overwhelm our defenses with numbers and speed. They don't know how many men we have inside. They're about to find out. Marco's hand moved to his radio. "All teams, we have confirmed hostiles preparing to breach. Weapons free, on my mark. Targets are wearing tactical gear and face coverings. Anyone matching that description who crosses the threshold is hostile. Engage with extreme prejudice." Raphael felt the familiar calm settle over him. The same mental state he entered before any major operation. Emotion was locked away, replaced by cold calculation and tactical awareness. "I want at least one of them alive for questioning, preferably Victor himself, if we can identify him. I'll pass the word." The monitor showed the assault team moving into position. They were good, disciplined, coordinated, clearly experienced, but they were walking into a kill box designed by people who understood urban warfare at a level most military units never achieved. 3, 2, 1, Marco counted down, watching the screens. Breach. The assault came from 4 directions simultaneously. Shape charges blew the locks on the main entrance and the loading bay, while 2 teams repelled from the roof through skylights that Raphael had deliberately left as apparent weak points. It was textbook urban assault, executed with professional precision. It was also exactly what Raphael had expected. The moment the charges detonated, Raphael's defenders opened fire. The warehouse erupted in controlled chaos. Muzzle flashes, the crack of rifles, the distinctive sound of shotguns at close range. The assault team had surprise and coordination, but Raphael's men had position and preparation. The team that breached the main entrance walked directly into a crossfire, caught between defenders positioned on elevated catwalks. 2 went down immediately, bodies crumpling as rounds found their targets. The survivors tried to fall back, but the entrance they'd blown open now offered no cover, no protection. The loading bay team fared better initially, using the vehicles stored there for cover as they exchanged fire with Raphael's men. But they were still trapped in a confined space with limited mobility and defenders who knew every angle, every sightline. The roof teams made it inside but found themselves in the exposed center of the warehouse floor, illuminated by overhead lights with nowhere to hide. One of Raphael's men hit the lights, plunging the warehouse into darkness, except for emergency lighting that had been specifically positioned to advantage the defenders. The assault team had night vision. Raphael could see the telltale green glow on the monitors, but night vision created its own blind spots, its own vulnerabilities. And Raphael's men had spent hours training in this exact space, learning to move in the dark, learning where every obstacle and advantage lay. The firefight lasted less than 3 minutes. When it was over, 7 members of the assault team were down. 5 dead, 2 wounded and disarmed. One had escaped back through the loading bay, and the final one, who'd been coordinating from Vehicle 3, drove off the moment it became clear the assault had failed. Marco was already moving, coordinating the cleanup. Secure the wounded, get medical attention, but keep them restrained. Collect all weapons and equipment. I want everything cataloged. And someone get me an ID on these people. Raphael walked onto the warehouse floor, stepping carefully around bodies and spent brass casings. The 2 wounded assailants had been zip-tied and were being attended to by one of Raphael's men who had EMT training. Both were young, maybe mid-20s, with the kind of hard eyes that came from seeing too much violence too early. "Which one of you is Victor?" Raphael asked, his voice carrying across the space. Neither answered. Raphael nodded to Marco, who pulled out a knife and held it casually, letting the overhead lights catch the blade. "My associate asked you a question. It would be wise to answer." One of the wounded men, dark hair, sharp features, a through-and-through gunshot wound in his shoulder, spat blood and glared up at Raphael. "Victor's not here. You think he'd risk himself on the initial assault? He's too smart for that." "Then who are you?" "Contractors. Hired help. We don't know who we're working for, don't know why we're here. Just got paid to hit this location and extract a target." "Bullshit." Raphael crouched down, bringing himself eye level with the wounded man. "You moved like a professional unit. Coordinated assault, proper tactical formation, shaped charges placed exactly where they do the most damage. That's not contractor work. That's military or law enforcement training. So I'll ask again, who are you working for?" The man's eyes flickered with something, fear maybe, or calculation. "If I tell you, I'm dead. Victor doesn't tolerate loose ends. You're dead anyway if you don't tell me. The only question is whether you die fast or slow, easy or hard." Raphael stood, nodding to Marco. "Make him understand his options." Marco moved forward with the knife, and the wounded man's resolve cracked. Wait. Okay. We're former military contractors. We all worked together in Syria and Afghanistan. Victor recruited us 6 months ago, said the Caruso family needed a special operations team for sensitive work. Tonight was supposed to be a cleanup job. Hit this location, eliminate the targets inside, make it look like a gang shooting. "What targets specifically?" 3 men named Antonio, Frank, and Sal. Also anyone else in the building who might have been at some charity event tonight. Victor said no witnesses, no exceptions. Raphael felt cold understanding settle in his chest. Salvatore Caruso wasn't just cleaning up loose ends, he was erasing the entire operation. Anyone who could connect the family to the poisoning was being systematically eliminated. "Where's Victor now?" The wounded man hesitated, weighing his loyalty against his survival instinct. Survival won. "He has a secondary team hitting another location, some medical facility in Tribeca. That's where the primary target is. The woman who got poisoned." "Elena." Raphael's phone was out before the man finished speaking, dialing Vincent. It rang once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th ring, Vincent answered, and Raphael could hear gunfire in the background. "We're under assault," Vincent shouted over the noise. "Professional team, maybe 6 shooters trying to breach the south entrance. We're holding them, but they're persistent. Where's Elena?" "Still secure in the basement. Dr. Reeves is with her, along with 3 guards. The attackers haven't made it past the ground floor yet." "Keep it that way. I'm sending additional support now." Raphael turned to Marco. "Take everyone we can spare and get to the medical facility. Victor's team is hitting it right now." Marco was already moving, shouting orders. Half of Raphael's men broke off and headed for the vehicles, weapons ready, moving with the kind of speed that came from understanding that seconds mattered. Raphael turned his attention back to the wounded contractor. "How many people on Victor's team?" 6 shooters for the medical facility, plus Victor himself for Overwatch. He's good, former Spetsnaz. Did wet work for the Russian mob before the Carusos recruited him. He won't stop until the target's dead, or he is. "Then I better make sure it's him." Raphael straightened, addressing the room. "I want this place locked down. Nobody in, nobody out. The wounded get medical attention and then they get questioned. I want every detail about Victor, his methods, his backup plans. And someone bring Nico Caruso here. It's time he understood exactly what his father thinks of him." Nico was dragged into the main warehouse space, still bound to his chair. His eyes went wide when he saw the bodies, the blood, the evidence of the firefight that had just concluded. Your father sent them, Raphael said without preamble. Professional military contractors led by a former Spetsnaz operative named Victor. Their orders were to kill everyone in this building who could connect the Caruso family to tonight's poisoning. That included the 3 lieutenants you worked with. It also included you. No. Nico was shaking his head frantically. No, my father wouldn't. There has to be a mistake. There's no mistake. Your father decided you were more of a liability than an asset. He sent Victor to clean up your mess, and that meant cleaning up you. Raphael pulled out his phone, opening the recording app. Now you have a choice, Nico. You can go down with your father's sinking ship, or you can help me make sure the right people pay for what happened tonight. What do you want? Everything. Every Caruso operation, every asset, every piece of leverage your family has built over the last 20 years. You're going to give me everything I need to dismantle your father's empire piece by piece. And in exchange, I'll make sure you live long enough to see him realize what his decision tonight cost him. Nico's resistance crumbled. Over the next 20 minutes, he talked. He gave Raphael access codes to encrypted files, locations of hidden assets, names of corrupted officials who were on the Caruso payroll. He outlined his father's entire operation with the desperate thoroughness of someone who knew cooperation was his only chance at survival. Raphael recorded it all, knowing that this information would give him leverage not just over the Caruso family, but over a dozen other organizations that did business with them. Nico wasn't just betraying his father, he was reshaping the entire power structure of New York's criminal underworld. Raphael's phone rang, Marco calling from the medical facility. Status, Raphael answered immediately. Victor's team is down. 3 dead, 2 in custody, 1 escaped. The escapee was wounded, won't get far. Victor himself wasn't among them. Best guess is he's falling back to regroup. Casualties on our side? 2 wounded, non-critical. Dr. Reeves and Elena are secure. The facility's holding. Relief flooded through Raphael, so intense it was almost painful. I'm coming there now. Maintain security protocols until I arrive. He ended the call and looked at Nico. You're coming with me. You're going to look Elena Marlowe in the eye and explain exactly why you tried to kill her and our child. And then you're going to help me make sure your father understands the consequences of his actions. They loaded Nico into the SUV, still bound but now gagged again to prevent any attempt at drawing attention during transport. Vincent drove with controlled aggression, weaving through early morning traffic that was just beginning to build as the city woke up. The medical facility looked like a war zone. Bullet holes pockmarked the south entrance. Windows were shattered, and security personnel moved with the heightened awareness of people who just survived combat. But the perimeter was secure, and Vincent's reinforcements had established defensive positions that would make any further assault attempt suicide. Raphael strode through the facility, leaving Nico with guards in the lobby. He needed to see Elena, needed to confirm with his own eyes that she was safe, that their baby was still fighting. Dr. Reeves met him outside the basement security room. She looked exhausted, her scrub stained with someone's blood, hopefully not Elena's. She's okay, Reeves said before Raphael could ask. Shaken up, scared, but physically okay. The baby's heartbeat remained stable throughout the attack. Whatever toxin was used, she's metabolizing it successfully. Can I see her? She's been asking for you since the shooting started. The security room was small, windowless, and reinforced with enough steel and concrete to withstand anything short of a direct missile strike. Elena sat on a cot in the corner, wrapped in blankets, her face pale, but her eyes sharp and aware. The moment she saw Raphael, she stood up, and he crossed the distance between them in 3 strides. He pulled her into his arms, feeling her shake against him, feeling the realness of her, the proof that she'd survived. I'm okay, she whispered against his chest. We're both okay. Raphael held her tighter, his hand moving to her abdomen, feeling for any sign of their child. I'm so sorry. I should have anticipated this, should have had better security. Raphael, stop! Elena pulled back enough to look up at him. You couldn't have known they'd send a professional kill team. You got here in time, we're safe. For now. Victor's still out there, and as long as he is, you're in danger. Then find him. Elena's voice was steady, determined. Find him and everyone else involved. Make sure they can never do this again. Raphael cupped her face in his hands, studying her eyes. The fear was there, but so was something else, a hardness that hadn't been there before. Tonight had changed her, had burned away whatever innocence remained and replaced it with the cold understanding that came from being targeted, hunted, marked for death. She was becoming what she needed to be to survive in his world. And Raphael wasn't sure if that made him proud or heartbroken. "I have Nico Caruso upstairs," he said quietly. "He's ready to give us everything we need to destroy his father's organization. But before we proceed, I need to know, do you want to face him? Do you want to hear why he did this?" Elena's expression went cold. "Yes. I want to look him in the eye when he explains why he tried to kill our baby." Raphael led her upstairs, his hand never leaving the small of her back. The guards brought Nico into a conference room, forcing him into a chair. When the gag was removed, he immediately started babbling. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know about the baby. I swear I didn't know." "Quiet." Elena's voice cut through Nico's panic like a scalpel. She walked to stand directly in front of him, and Raphael saw Nico flinch at whatever he saw in her eyes. "You poisoned me," Elena said, her voice absolutely level. "You paid Vivian Sterling to identify me. You coordinated with a pharmaceutical consultant to create a toxin. You arranged for a waiter to serve it to me specifically. And you did all of this to send a message to Raphael, to prove that you could reach his family, to demonstrate power." "I thought it would just make you sick," Nico said desperately. "I don't care what you thought." Elena's hand moved to her abdomen, protective and possessive. "You tried to kill my child. You tried to kill me. And then when it failed, your father sent a team to finish the job. So now I want you to tell me everything. I want every name, every detail, every person who helped you. And I want it on record so that when this goes to trial, when your entire organization falls apart, everyone knows exactly who's responsible." Nico looked at Raphael, as if hoping for rescue. Raphael's expression was stone. "Answer her questions, all of them. And Nico, if you lie even once, if you try to protect anyone involved in this, I'll make sure Victor's team looks merciful compared to what I do to you." What followed was a complete dismantling of the conspiracy. Nico gave names, dates, locations. He outlined how Vivian had been recruited, how the pharmaceutical consultant had been paid, how the staffing agency had been compromised. He explained that his father had known about the general plan, but not the specifics, that Salvatore had approved pressure tactics against Raphael's family, but had later ordered the cleanup when he realized how catastrophically Nico had miscalculated. Elena recorded it all on her phone, her expression never changing, her questions surgical in their precision. She was magnificent, terrifying and beautiful, and absolutely in control. Raphael watched her interrogate Nico with the same cold efficiency he himself would have used, and felt something shift in his chest. This was his partner, his equal, the mother of his child and the woman who would stand beside him as they rebuilt the power structure of New York's underworld. When Elena was finally satisfied, when Nico had given up every secret and every advantage his family had ever held, she looked at Raphael. "What happens to him now?" "That depends on what you want." Elena studied Nico with clinical detachment. "I want him to testify. I want everything he just told us presented in court, with his full cooperation. I want the Caruso family destroyed completely, legally, in a way that ensures they can never rebuild." "That means he lives," Raphael said. "Protected custody, witness protection eventually, but he lives." "I know." Elena's smile was cold. "I want him to live knowing that he destroyed his own family. I want him to spend the rest of his life understanding that his father was willing to kill him to cover up his mistakes. That's a worse punishment than death." Raphael nodded slowly, recognizing the justice in her reasoning. Death was final, clean, but living with betrayal, with the knowledge that you'd been deemed expendable by the people who were supposed to protect you, that was a different kind of torture. "Then we do it your way." Raphael turned to Marco. "Arrange protective custody. Federal prosecutors will want to talk to him, and he'll cooperate fully. In exchange, he gets to live." Marco nodded and began making calls. Raphael guided Elena back toward the basement, away from Nico and the cleanup that was still ongoing. "How are you really feeling?" he asked when they were alone in the stairwell. "Angry, scared, determined." Elena leaned against the wall, one hand on her abdomen. "Our baby's fighting, Raphael. I can feel it. This tiny person who won't give up, who survived poison and stress and everything thrown at them. We have to be as strong as they are. We will be. Raphael pulled her close again, pressing his lips to her forehead. I'm going to find Victor. I'm going to find everyone involved in this. And I'm going to make sure you and our baby are never in danger again. I believe you. They stood there in the stairwell, two people who'd chosen each other despite every rational reason not to, who'd created a life together in the middle of violence and chaos, who were now bound by something stronger than love, the absolute determination to protect their family at any cost. Upstairs, Nico Caruso was being processed into protective custody, his testimony already being transcribed and verified. Across the city, Marco's teams were moving on Caruso assets, seizing properties, turning allies, dismantling an empire that had taken decades to build. And somewhere in the shadows, Victor was planning his next move, unaware that he'd already lost, that Elena Marlowe had survived his best attempt, and that Raphael Moretti was coming for him with the kind of focused vengeance that would make the name Victor synonymous with failure in the circles where such things mattered. The war had just begun. But standing in that stairwell with Elena in his arms and their baby fighting for survival between them, Raphael knew with absolute certainty how it would end. The sun was rising over Manhattan when Raphael's phone rang with the call he'd been waiting for. Marco's voice came through, crisp and controlled despite the exhaustion Raphael could hear beneath it. We found Victor's safe house in Queens. Abandoned, but he left in a hurry. Found traces of blood, matches the DNA from the wounded contractor who escaped the medical facility. Victor's getting sloppy. Or desperate. Raphael was standing at the window of the medical facility's conference room, watching dawn paint the city in shades of amber and gold. Behind him, Elena was finally sleeping, curled on a couch with blankets tucked around her, and Dr. Reeves monitoring her vitals every 15 minutes. What else? Laptop, partially wiped, but our tech guys think they can recover data. Also found communications with someone using the handle Patriarch. Pretty obvious code for Salvatore Caruso. Looks like Victor's been reporting directly to the old man, not through Nico. Raphael absorbed this information, fitting it into the larger picture forming in his mind. Salvatore never trusted his son to handle this properly. He was running Victor as a backup plan from the beginning. That's my read, which means Salvatore knew exactly what Nico was planning and let it happen anyway. Wanted to see if his son could pull it off, and when Nico failed, activated the cleanup protocol. Raphael's hand tightened on the phone. Where's Salvatore now? Still at his Connecticut estate. We've had eyes on it since this started. No movement, no indication he's planning to run. Either he thinks he's untouchable, or he's preparing for a siege. Let him prepare. Raphael turned away from the window, his reflection ghosting across the glass. A man who looked calm, controlled, but whose eyes held the promise of absolute destruction. I want every piece of evidence we've gathered compiled and delivered to the federal prosecutors. Nico's testimony, Victor's communications, the contractor's statements, everything. I want Salvatore Caruso arrested on federal charges before the end of the day. Boss, if we go the legal route, it could take months to build a case that sticks. Guy like Salvatore, he's got lawyers who can tie this up for years. I'm not interested in months or years, Marco. I'm interested in sending a message. Raphael's voice went cold. Salvatore Caruso tried to kill my family. He sent a professional killer after Elena while she was carrying my child. He orchestrated a conspiracy that nearly cost me everything that matters. The legal system can have what's left of him after I'm done. There was a pause on the other end of the line. What do you need from me? Coordinate with the federal prosecutors. Give them everything they need to make arrests. Then I want you to reach out to every family, every organization, every player in New York's underworld who's ever done business with the Carusos. Let them know that Salvatore's empire is falling, that his protection is gone, that anyone who stands with him now is choosing the losing side. They'll turn on him like sharks smelling blood. That's the idea. Raphael checked his watch. 6:47 a.m. In less than 12 hours, the entire power structure of the city would shift. And Marco? I want a meeting with Salvatore. Face to face, just the two of us. Can you arrange it? He'll never agree to that. He has to know you're coming for him. He'll agree when he understands what the alternative is. Tell him I have his son's complete testimony on record. Tell him I have evidence linking him directly to the poisoning attempt. Tell him I'm offering him one chance to end this without his entire family being destroyed." Raphael's smile was cold. "He's old school, Marco. He'll want to negotiate, try to find an angle. He'll take the meeting. And when he does, then Salvatore Caruso and I are going to have a conversation about consequences." Raphael ended the call and returned to the couch where Elena slept. Dr. Reeves looked up from checking the monitors, her expression cautiously optimistic. "Her vitals are stabilizing," Reeves said quietly. "Blood pressure's back to normal. Fetal heart rate is strong. Whatever toxin was used, her body's clearing it efficiently. I think she's going to be okay." "And the baby?" "Too early to know for certain, but all indicators are positive. The cramping has stopped, no signs of premature labor. Placenta looks healthy on ultrasound. We'll need to monitor closely for the next few weeks, but right now, I'm cautiously optimistic." Raphael felt something tight in his chest loosen fractionally. They'd survived. Elena and their baby had survived, and now he could focus entirely on making sure the people responsible understood exactly what that survival had cost them. Elena stirred, her eyes opening slowly. When she saw Raphael, she smiled, tired and fragile, but genuine. "What time is it?" "Almost 7. You should sleep more." "I've been sleeping for hours." She pushed herself upright, one hand automatically moving to her abdomen. "Have you slept at all?" "I'll sleep when this is finished." Elena studied his face with the kind of knowing attention that came from months of learning to read his moods, his tells, the small signs that indicated what he was planning. "You're going after Salvatore Caruso." It wasn't a question. Raphael sat beside her, taking her hand. "He ordered the hit on you. He sent Victor to finish what Nico started. As long as he's alive and free, you're in danger." "Then end it." Elena's voice was steady, certain. "Do whatever you need to do to make sure our baby is safe. It's going to get ugly. The kind of ugly that makes the news, that draws federal attention, that could complicate our lives for a long time." "Our lives are already complicated, Raphael. We're having a baby together while you run a criminal empire. Nothing about this is simple." She squeezed his hand. "But I'd rather deal with complicated and safe than simple and dead." Raphael lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "When this is over, when Salvatore and Victor and everyone else involved is dealt with, we need to talk, really talk, about what comes next, about how we raise this child, about what kind of life we want to give them." "I already know what kind of life I want to give them," Elena said quietly. "One where they're protected, loved, and taught that family is everything. One where they understand that their father is dangerous but honorable, that he keeps his word and protects what's his. One where they grow up knowing they're wanted, even if they weren't planned." "You make it sound almost normal." "Nothing about us is normal, but that doesn't mean it can't be good." Elena leaned against his shoulder, and Raphael wrapped his arm around her, holding her close. "How long until you have to leave?" "Few hours." Marco's arranging the meeting with Salvatore, coordinating with federal prosecutors, making sure all the pieces are in place. "Then stay with me until you have to go. Just stay." So Raphael stayed, holding Elena while she drifted back to sleep, watching the monitors that showed their baby's heartbeat, steady and strong and fighting. He thought about the life they were creating, about the impossible balancing act of raising a child in a world built on violence and power. But he also thought about Elena's strength, about the way she'd faced down Nico without flinching, about her absolute determination to protect their baby. She was right. Nothing about their life was normal. But together, maybe they could build something good anyway. His phone buzzed with a text from Marco. Meeting arranged. Salvatore agreed to meet at neutral location, his lawyer's office in Midtown, 2 p.m. He's bringing 2 bodyguards. You can bring 2 as well. Federal agents will be standing by to make arrests once the meeting concludes. Raphael texted back a confirmation, then made a second call. This one to his own lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Catherine Mills, who specialized in navigating the gray areas between legal and illegal, between business and crime. "I need you at a meeting this afternoon," Raphael said when she answered. "Salvatore Caruso and his legal team. I'm going to offer him a deal, and I need you to make sure the paperwork is airtight." "What kind of deal?" Catherine's voice was professionally skeptical. She'd been Raphael's lawyer for 6 years and had learned to be suspicious of any arrangement that sounded too good to be true. Salvatore provides a full confession to federal prosecutors, implicating everyone in his organization who was involved in the poisoning attempt. He pleads guilty to all charges, accepts whatever sentence the court hands down. In exchange, I don't dismantle his legitimate business holdings, and his family gets to keep their wealth and status. He'll never agree to that. You're asking him to destroy his own empire. His empire is already destroyed. I have his son's testimony, his cleaner's communications, and enough evidence to put him away for the rest of his life. The only question is whether he takes everyone down with him or protects what's left of his family. Raphael's voice went cold. And Catherine, if he doesn't take the deal, I want you to file civil suits against every Caruso asset, every business, every property. I want them buried in legal action until there's nothing left but bankruptcy and ruin. Understood. I'll have the paperwork ready by 2. The hours between dawn and the meeting passed in a strange, suspended tension. Elena woke again around noon, stronger now, and insisted on eating something despite the nausea that still lingered. Dr. Reeves ran another ultrasound, confirming that the baby was stable, that Elena's body was healing. You're going to need bed rest for at least a week, Reeves said, studying the monitor. No stress, no excitement, nothing that could trigger complications. I know that's asking a lot given the circumstances, but for the baby's sake, I'll make sure she follows your instructions, Raphael promised. He looked at Elena. Which means you're staying here, under guard, until I get back from this meeting. Elena started to protest, then seemed to recognize the futility of arguing. Fine, but Raphael, come back to me. Come back to us. Always. At 1:30 p.m., Raphael left the medical facility with Vincent and Marco flanking him. They drove to Midtown in the armored SUV, each of them armed and ready for the possibility that this meeting was a trap, that Salvatore might try one final desperate move. But the lawyer's office was exactly what it appeared to be. A neutral space in a high-rise building with security protocols that prevented weapons and ensured that any violence would bring immediate law enforcement response. Smart choice on Salvatore's part, though it wouldn't save him from what was coming. Salvatore Caruso was waiting in a conference room on the 40th floor. He was older than Raphael had expected, maybe 70, with the kind of weathered face that came from decades of hard living and harder decisions. His eyes were still sharp, though, calculating and cold as they took in Raphael's entrance. Raphael Moretti, Salvatore said, his voice carrying the faint rasp of a lifelong smoker. You've caused me a significant amount of trouble in the last 24 hours. Your son caused the trouble when he tried to poison my fiancée. Raphael sat across from him, Catherine Mills taking the seat beside him while Marco stood at the door. I'm just dealing with the consequences. Elena Marlowe. Salvatore's expression didn't change. I heard she survived. Unfortunate that. Would have been cleaner if the plan had worked. Raphael felt rage spike hot and immediate, but he controlled it, channeling it into cold calculation. You just confessed to conspiracy to commit murder. My lawyer's recording this conversation, and there are federal agents waiting outside ready to make arrests. I'm 73 years old, Raphael. I've been in this business for 50 years. You think I'm afraid of prison? Salvatore leaned back, studying Raphael with the kind of assessment that came from decades of evaluating opponents. I'm more interested in understanding what you want. You could have had me killed a dozen different ways by now. Instead, you arranged a meeting. So what's the play? The play is simple. You confess to everything: the poisoning attempt, the cleanup operation, the use of Victor and his team. You implicate everyone in your organization who was involved. You plead guilty and accept whatever sentence the court hands down. And in exchange, your family keeps their legitimate holdings. Your wife, your daughter, your grandson. They maintain their wealth and status. They're not dragged through the mud of a public trial or targeted by every enemy you've ever made who sees an opportunity for revenge. Salvatore was quiet for a long moment, his eyes never leaving Raphael's face. You're offering to protect my family if I fall on my sword. I'm offering you a chance to do the honorable thing, to take responsibility for your actions instead of letting your loved ones pay the price. Raphael leaned forward. Your son was willing to testify against you, Salvatore. He gave me everything: Access codes, asset locations, names of everyone in your organization. He betrayed you completely because he knew you sent Victor to kill him. So the question is, are you going to be less honorable than Nico? Something flickered across Salvatore's face. Pain, maybe, or recognition. Nico always was weak. I should have seen it sooner, should have prepared better succession plans. Nico was desperate and stupid, but you're the one who ordered his death when he failed. You're the one who decided cleanup was more important than family. Raphael's voice went hard. So don't talk to me about weakness when you were willing to murder your own son to cover your mistakes. It wasn't personal, it was business. Everything is personal when it involves family. Raphael pulled out his phone, opening the recording of Nico's confession. Listen to this. Listen to your son explain how he tried to kill Elena because he thought it would make him worthy of your respect. Listen to him break down when he realizes you sent assassins to eliminate him. Raphael played the recording, and Salvatore's expression went carefully blank as he listened to Nico's voice explaining the conspiracy, admitting his failures, begging for protection from his own father's cleanup team. When it finished, the conference room was silent, except for the ambient noise of the city 40 floors below. You've made your point, Salvatore said finally. What guarantee do I have that you'll honor this deal? You have my word. And unlike your son, unlike Victor, unlike everyone in your organization who failed you, when I give my word, I keep it. Raphael nodded to Catherine, who slid a document across the table. This contract outlines the terms. You confess, you plead guilty, you accept sentencing. In exchange, all Caruso family assets held in legitimate trusts, your wife's properties, your daughter's investments, your grandson's education fund, remain untouched. No civil suits, no asset seizure beyond what the federal government takes as part of your sentence. Salvatore picked up the document, reading through it with the careful attention of someone who understood that details mattered. His lawyer leaned in, whispering urgently, but Salvatore waved him off. If I refuse, then I destroy everything, Raphael said simply. Every business, every asset, every connection your family has built over 3 generations. I tie everything up in legal action until your legitimate holdings are worthless. I make sure every enemy you've ever made knows your organization is vulnerable, and I ensure that your family spends the rest of their lives looking over their shoulders, wondering when someone will come for revenge. You'd wage war on an old man's legacy. You tried to kill my child. There's nothing I wouldn't do to make sure you pay for that. Raphael's voice was absolutely level. The only question is whether you pay alone or take your entire family down with you. Salvatore looked at his lawyer, then back at Raphael. Something in his expression shifted, not quite surrender, but acknowledgement of reality. He'd played the game for 50 years, had won more often than he'd lost. But this time, he'd miscalculated. This time, he'd targeted someone who fought with the same ruthlessness Salvatore himself had once possessed. I want assurances about my grandson. He's 15, clean, doesn't know anything about the family business. I want him protected from any fallout. Done. He stays in school, goes to college, lives whatever life he chooses. He's not responsible for your choices. And my daughter? She runs several legitimate charities, does real good in the community. I don't want her dragged into this. As long as she wasn't involved in the poisoning attempt, she's not a target. The charities continue, her reputation stays intact. Salvatore nodded slowly, then picked up a pen. His hand shook slightly as he signed the document, but the signature was clear and legally binding. You're a ruthless man, Raphael Moretti. I can respect that, even if I hate what it's cost me. I'm a man who protects his family, same as you claimed to be, before you decided power was more important than blood. Raphael took the signed document and handed it to Catherine, who immediately made copies. Then he pulled out his phone and sent a text to the federal agents waiting outside. Within 5 minutes, agents entered the conference room with weapons drawn and badges displayed. Salvatore stood calmly, offering his wrists for the handcuffs, his expression resigned but not defeated. One last thing, Salvatore said as the agents read him his rights. Victor's still out there. He won't stop just because I'm arrested. He's old school, takes contracts seriously. You'll need to deal with him separately. I intend to. Raphael watched as Salvatore was led away, This man who'd built an empire and lost it in a single night because he'd underestimated the lengths Raphael would go to protect Elena and their child. Marco appeared at Raphael's shoulder. Federal prosecutors have the evidence. They're moving on the rest of the organization now. Arrests happening across the city. The Caruso empire is falling apart as we speak. And Victor? Still in the wind. But we've got every informant, every contact working to find him. He can't hide forever. Raphael nodded, calculating his next moves. Victor was the last loose end, the final threat that needed to be eliminated before Elena and the baby would truly be safe. His phone rang. An unknown number. Raphael answered cautiously. Yes? Raphael Moretti. The voice was accented, Russian or Eastern European, cold and professional. My name is Victor. We should talk. Raphael's hand tightened on the phone. I'm listening. I've been watching the news. Salvatore Caruso arrested, his organization dismantled, federal agents seizing assets across the city. Very impressive work. Very thorough. There was a pause. I'm a professional, Mr. Moretti. I take contracts seriously, but I'm also a pragmatist. My employer is in federal custody, his organization is destroyed, and continuing this contract serves no purpose. You tried to kill my fiancée. You led an assault team against a medical facility where she was recovering. You think I'm going to let that go just because it's inconvenient for you to continue? I think you're a smart man who understands that continued conflict benefits neither of us. I'm offering you a deal. I leave New York permanently, disappear, never take another contract against you or your family. In exchange, you don't hunt me. You let me walk away. Raphael considered this. Victor was right. He was a professional, a hired gun who'd been following orders. Hunting him down would take time and resources, would potentially expose Raphael's organization to risks that weren't worth eliminating one contractor. But Victor had also tried to kill Elena, had led men against the medical facility while she was sleeping, vulnerable, carrying Raphael's child. That wasn't something Raphael could forgive, pragmatism or not. Here's my counteroffer, Raphael said. You turn yourself in to federal authorities. You provide testimony about Salvatore Caruso's orders, about the cleanup operation, about everyone involved. You cooperate fully with prosecutors, and in exchange, I make sure you live long enough to serve whatever sentence you receive. Victor laughed, the sound cold and humorless. You want me to confess to attempted murder, to trade my freedom for a prison cell. I want you to face consequences for your actions. Same as Salvatore, same as Nico, same as everyone else who thought they could target my family without repercussions. And if I refuse, then I hunt you. I use every resource at my disposal, every contact, every advantage. I find you, Victor, and when I do, we have a very different kind of conversation, one that doesn't end with you walking away. The line was quiet for a long moment. Raphael could hear Victor breathing, calculating odds, weighing options. He was a professional, which meant he understood when a situation was untenable. You're asking me to trust that you'll keep your word, Victor said finally. That you won't have me killed in prison, won't arrange for an accident. I'm giving you my word that you'll serve your sentence and nothing more. No arranged accidents, no prison violence. You cooperate. You testify. You live. That's the deal. Another pause. I need 24 hours to consider. You have 6. After that, I assume you've chosen the hard way, and I start hunting. Raphael ended the call and looked at Marco. Track that call. I want to know where he was when he made it. Already on it. Tech team's triangulating now. Raphael's phone rang again. This time, Dr. Reeves. Raphael, you need to get back here. Elena's having contractions. The world narrowed to a single point of focus. How bad? Regular, 5 minutes apart. Her body's under stress from everything that's happened, and it's triggering early labor. I'm doing everything I can to stop it, but Reeves' voice was strained. Raphael, she's only 4 months pregnant. If we can't stop this, the baby won't survive. Raphael was already moving, Marco and Vincent falling in behind him as they raced for the elevator. The drive to the medical facility was a blur of traffic and adrenaline, Vincent pushing the SUV to its limits, while Raphael sat in the back seat trying to control the fear that threatened to overwhelm him. They'd survived the poisoning. They'd survived Victor's assault team. They'd dismantled the Caruso empire and put Salvatore in federal custody. But none of that would matter if Elena lost the baby now. if the stress and trauma of the last 24 hours cost them the life they'd created together. The medical facility was on full alert when Raphael arrived. Dr. Reeves met him at the entrance, her expression grim but controlled. She's stable for now. The contractions have slowed with medication, but her body's on the edge. Any more stress, any more trauma, and we won't be able to stop it. Let me see her. Elena was in a hospital bed, hooked up to monitors and IVs, her face pale and drawn. But her eyes were fierce when they met Raphael's, determined and absolutely refusing to surrender. "The baby's still fighting," she said before Raphael could speak. "Dr. Reeves says we have a chance if we can keep the contraction stopped for the next few hours. Let my body stabilize." Raphael took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "Then that's what we do, whatever it takes. Did you get Salvatore?" "In federal custody. Signed a full confession implicating everyone involved. The Caruso organization is finished." "And Victor?" "Called me. Wants to negotiate a deal. I gave him 6 hours to turn himself in or I start hunting him." Raphael pressed her hand to his lips. "But right now, none of that matters. The only thing that matters is you and our baby." Elena's hand tightened on his. "Raphael, if something happens, if I can't hold on, don't." Raphael's voice was rough. "Don't say it. You're going to be fine. The baby's going to be fine. We've survived everything else. We'll survive this too." The next 6 hours were the longest of Raphael's life. He sat beside Elena's bed, holding her hand, watching the monitors that tracked contractions and fetal heartbeat and a dozen other metrics that Dr. Reeves monitored with intense focus. The contractions came and went, never quite stopping, but never quite progressing either. Elena's body caught in a liminal space between crisis and recovery. Raphael made calls to Marco, coordinating the ongoing dismantlement of the Caruso empire, to Catherine, ensuring all the legal documentation was properly filed, to his own organization, making sure operations continued smoothly despite his absence. But his attention never fully left Elena, never stopped tracking her breathing, her vitals, the small signs that indicated whether she was winning this fight or losing it. At hour 4, Victor called again. "I'm at the Federal Building in Lower Manhattan. I'm turning myself in, as you requested. I expect you to keep your word about my safety." "You'll be safe," Raphael confirmed. "Cooperate fully, and you'll live to serve your sentence." "I'm a man of my word, Mr. Moretti. I hope you are as well." The call ended, and Raphael felt one more piece of the puzzle click into place. Victor was neutralized. Salvatore was in custody. Nico was in protective custody preparing to testify, and the entire Caruso organization was falling apart under the combined weight of federal prosecution and Raphael's strategic dismantlement. The only thing left was for Elena and the baby to survive. At hour 6, the contractions finally stopped. Dr. Reeves ran another ultrasound, her expression shifting from concern to cautious relief. "The baby's heartbeat is stabilizing, no signs of distress. I think we're out of immediate danger." Elena sagged against the pillows, exhaustion and relief washing over her in equal measure. "We made it." "You made it," Raphael corrected, his hand still holding hers. "You fought for our baby when your body was trying to give up. You're stronger than I ever imagined." "I had good motivation." "Nipa." Elena managed a tired smile. "Someone once told me that family is everything, that protecting the people you love is worth any cost. I'm starting to understand what that means." Over the next 3 days, Elena's condition continued to improve. The toxin cleared completely from her system, the contractions didn't return, and the baby's heartbeat remained strong and steady. Dr. Reeves finally cleared her to leave the medical facility, though with strict instructions for bed rest and reduced stress. "I know that's asking the impossible given your circumstances," Reeves said as she signed the discharge papers, "but for the baby's sake, try to keep things as calm as possible for the next few weeks." Raphael arranged for Elena to stay at his penthouse in Tribeca, the most secure location he owned, with guards stationed at every entrance and enough security measures to make Fort Knox jealous. He took a leave from his usual operations, delegating to Marco and his other lieutenants while he focused entirely on Elena and their baby. The city moved on around them. Salvatore Caruso's trial began, with Nico testifying against his own father in proceedings that dominated the news cycle for weeks. Victor provided corroborating testimony. detailing the cleanup operation in Salvatore's direct orders. The federal case was airtight, ironclad, the kind of prosecution that ended with life sentences and the complete destruction of everything the Caruso family had built. Vivian Sterling, the event coordinator, and the 3 Caruso lieutenants all took plea deals in exchange for testimony. The pharmaceutical consultant, Dr. Kemp, was found in a hotel in Atlantic City and arrested without incident. Every person involved in the poisoning attempt faced consequences, their lives upended by the decision to target Rafael's family. And through it all, Elena rested and healed and grew stronger. Her abdomen began to show the unmistakable curve of pregnancy, their baby growing despite everything that had tried to stop it. Rafael found himself obsessed with that curve, with the physical proof that they'd survived, that the life they'd created was thriving. 8 weeks after the charity gala, Dr. Reeves performed another ultrasound. Fetal development is right on track, she announced, smiling for the first time since the crisis began. Strong heartbeat, good growth, no signs of lasting damage from the toxin exposure. I'd say we're officially out of the danger zone. Elena cried when she heard the news, tears of relief and joy streaming down her face. Rafael held her while she sobbed, his own eyes suspiciously wet, his hand resting on her abdomen where their baby, their daughter, the ultrasound had revealed, was safe and growing. "We need to name her," Elena said when she could speak again. "She fought so hard to survive. She deserves a name that honors that." "What about Vera?" Rafael suggested. "It means faith, truth. Seemed appropriate for someone who proved that truth and faith can survive even when everything else falls apart." "Vera Moretti." Elena tested the name, smiling. "I love it. It's perfect." The trial concluded 3 months after the poisoning attempt. Salvatore Caruso was sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole. Nico received a lighter sentence in exchange for his cooperation, 15 years, with parole possible after 10. Victor got 25 years. The others received varying sentences based on their level of involvement and cooperation. The Caruso empire was officially dismantled, its assets seized, its operations absorbed by other organizations, or shut down entirely. The power vacuum created opportunities that Rafael was uniquely positioned to exploit, expanding his own influence while maintaining the legitimacy that had always separated him from pure criminals like Salvatore. But more than empire building, more than power consolidation, Rafael focused on preparing for Vera's arrival. He converted one of the penthouse bedrooms into a nursery, working with Elena to choose colors and furniture and all the small details that transformed a room into a sanctuary. He attended every doctor's appointment, every ultrasound, learning everything he could about pregnancy and childbirth and infant care. And he made plans, long-term plans about how to raise a daughter in his world, how to protect her without suffocating her, how to give her the kind of life that balanced safety with freedom. Elena grew throughout the pregnancy, her body changing to accommodate their daughter. She was magnificent, fierce and protective, and absolutely uncompromising about what she would and wouldn't accept for their child. She insisted that Vera would attend normal schools, have normal friends, live as normal a life as possible, despite Rafael's empire. "I won't let her grow up isolated," Elena said during one discussion about security protocols. "I won't let her be so protected that she's never able to trust anyone, never able to have real relationships." "Then we'll find a balance," Rafael promised. "Security that's present but not suffocating. Protection that allows her to live, not just survive." They were still negotiating those details when Elena went into labor on a cold January morning, 6 months after the charity gala that had nearly ended everything. The contractions started around 4 a.m., and by sunrise they were at the private medical facility where Dr. Reeves and her team were waiting. The labor was long and difficult, Elena's body still carrying stress from the poisoning attempt despite the months of recovery. But she fought through it with the same determination she'd shown throughout the pregnancy, refusing pain medication because she wanted to be fully present, fully aware for every moment of Vera's arrival. Rafael stayed beside her throughout, holding her hand, coaching her breathing, being present in a way that terrified him because it meant being vulnerable, being open, being the kind of person who could be destroyed if something went wrong. But nothing went wrong. At 3:47 p.m. on a January afternoon, Vera Elena Moretti entered the world with a cry that announced she was alive. She was here. She had survived everything thrown at her and emerged victorious. Dr. Reeves placed the baby on Elena's chest, and Raphael watched his daughter take her first breaths, watched her tiny hands grip Elena's finger, watched her eyes, dark like his own, blink open and survey the world she'd just entered. "She's perfect," Elena whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Raphael, she's absolutely perfect." Raphael couldn't speak. He could only stare at this tiny person who was half him and half Elena, who'd survived poison and stress and every obstacle that had tried to prevent her existence. His daughter, his family. When he finally found his voice, all he could manage was, "Yes, she is." The weeks after Vera's birth passed in a blur of sleepless nights and constant vigilance, and the kind of fierce protective love that Raphael had never imagined himself capable of feeling. He held his daughter at 3 a.m. when she cried, changed diapers with the same focus he'd once applied to business negotiations, learned to decode her different cries and understand what she needed. Elena watched him with soft eyes, understanding that this was transformation in real time. Raphael Moretti, feared underworld kingpin, reduced to complete surrender by a 7-pound baby girl. "You're good at this," she said one night, watching Raphael rock Vera to sleep. "Better than I expected." "I had good motivation," Raphael replied, echoing Elena's words from months ago. "Someone once told me that family is everything. I'm starting to understand what that means." 4 months after Vera's birth, the Vanderbilt Grand Hotel hosted another charity gala. This one was for pediatric cancer research, the same cause that had been supported by the gala where Elena was poisoned. But this time, the event had different meaning. Raphael and Elena arrived together, Vera sleeping peacefully in a designer baby carrier against Elena's chest. They were making a statement that they'd survived, that they were stronger than ever, that the attack had failed completely. The guests stared as they entered. Everyone knew the story by now: the poisoning attempt, the Caruso Empire's fall, the trial that had dominated headlines for months. They knew that Raphael Moretti had dismantled one of New York's most powerful crime families in retaliation for an attack on his family. And they understood, watching him move through the ballroom, with Elena at his side and their daughter sleeping peacefully against her chest, that Raphael Moretti was no longer just a powerful crime lord. He was a father, a family man, someone who would quite literally burn the world down to protect the people he loved. Elena held Raphael's arm as they moved through the crowd, and she felt the shift in how people responded to them. They weren't just a couple anymore. They were a unit, a family, something that commanded respect and fear in equal measure. "How does it feel?" Raphael murmured as they paused near the champagne fountain where everything had begun. "Victorious," Elena replied, looking down at Vera's sleeping face. "We survived, Raphael. We fought, we protected what mattered, and we survived. We did more than survive. We won." Raphael pressed a kiss to Elena's temple, then to Vera's soft baby hair. "We built something worth protecting, something worth fighting for." The gala continued around them, music playing, champagne flowing, New York's elite celebrating and networking and pretending that the violence of 4 months ago hadn't fundamentally changed the city's power structure. But Raphael and Elena stood apart from it all, focused entirely on their daughter and each other. Later, after they'd made their appearance and fulfilled their social obligations, they returned to the penthouse. Raphael carried Vera while Elena walked beside him, both of them exhausted but content. In the nursery they'd built together, Raphael placed Vera in her crib, watching her sleep with the same intense focus he'd once reserved for business deals and power plays. Elena wrapped her arms around him from behind, resting her head against his back. "I love you," she said quietly. "I never said it before, never let myself say it because it felt too big, too overwhelming. But I'm saying it now. I love you, Raphael Moretti. I love the life we've built together." Raphael turned in her arms, cupping her face in his hands. "I love you too. More than I thought I was capable of loving anyone. You and Vera, you're everything that matters." They stood there in the nursery, holding each other while their daughter slept, two people who'd survived attempted murder and emerged stronger for it. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Raising a child in Raphael's world never could be. But they'd proven they could face anything together, could survive any threat, could protect what mattered most. And in the end, that was all that really mattered. Not power or empire or the endless games of the underworld, Just family, love, and the fierce determination to protect both at any cost. Vera stirred in her sleep, making the small sounds that would soon escalate to crying if she wasn't fed. Elena moved to pick her up, settling into the rocking chair, while Raphael watched his family with something approaching peace. This was what he'd fought for. This was what he destroyed the Caruso Empire to protect. And looking at Elena and Vera, safe and healthy in his, Raphael knew with absolute certainty that he'd do it all again without hesitation. Because family truly was everything, and Raphael Moretti protected what was his, always.